Good evening, everyone. This is the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. If you're here for another meeting, you're in the wrong spot. That's right, that's right. So this will commence the September 25th, 2017 meeting of the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency. First item of business is a warm welcome to our newest member, Alan Rossi, who is joining us tonight. And also, Alan, you will also be seated tonight as well. Next up is review and approval of the draft minutes of August 28th. Has everyone received a copy of the draft minutes and had an opportunity to read them? Yes. Is there any comments, questions, or additions to the minutes? Okay. Is there a second? Bill seconds. All in favor? Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Next up is the director's report. Pat, if you would, please.
Thankfully, this month's report is short, given our agenda this evening. Budget season has begun, which seems to come earlier and earlier. To the best of my knowledge, we don't have any big projects coming up for next year, unless some members have something they've been kicking around and would like to discuss. So I expect next year's budget to be pretty darn similar to this year's budget, which should make it attainable for us to keep within the 2% increase that we've been given soft directions on. Thank you to all the members with the feedback for the Q&A. As you know, we've been speaking about the website and its shortcomings, and we're working hard to upgrade those and make it more current and more helpful. So the Q&A, taking all the comments that were received and coalescing them into one document, which I'll recirculate. And hopefully all those who submitted comments will be happy enough, since that's about as good as you're going to get. And that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, moving on to other business. We have 86 Cutler Road, considerations for a field change.
Okay. If you recall, not that long ago, the agency approved 86 Cutler. This was the site that had a substantial amount of fill, historic fill in the backyard. The new owners were tasked with pulling the fill back to a line as approved by the agency, and that line was predicated on some best professional judgment from Steve Danzer, looking at the wetlands on either side of the property and then marking the approximate wetland boundary as he would expect it to be. Unfortunately, his sketch of where the wetland began on either side of the property was put onto the site plan without field verification by either the engineer or the surveyor. So the information that we were collectively, both the applicant and us, were working off of was not entirely accurate. So now that the earthwork has been conducted out on the site, the wetland line is now evident, and it is in fact moved further west than anticipated. So the question then became, do you just slide the retaining wall west, maintaining the same 12-foot offset between the wetland and the retaining wall? Or did the agency make a decision that allowed 12 feet based on the conditions that they were given? And if the conditions had been different, would you all have expected a different number out of that, where the 12 feet might have been increased to something else? So in light of the fact of these, the situation of professional judgment and some lack of follow-through by some other professionals, the applicant is asking that rather than keeping the line, the retaining wall, there we go. So this was the approved wall. And then this, if it was moved out and you maintain the 12 feet off the wetland boundary, that would be the far left wall. This, you all have this map in front of you. So the applicant is asking if we could just split the difference and move the wall 18 feet to the west, and then gain 18 feet of additional buffer to the wetland. And if, I know the applicant and his agent is here this evening, this is the agency's portion of the agenda, and if this is something that the agency would prefer to speak about in the public session, then that would have to wait till the end of the meeting.
Okay.
But if you're comfortable with this as is, then we can just move on it in that regard.
Okay. Does staff have an opinion on this? You feel comfortable with?
I do.
With splitting the difference?
Yep.
2 thumbs up? Okay. I would agree. With the rest of the agency, have any objections to that agreement?
Move to accept the compromise.
Okay, is there a
Okay.
second? Does it need a second? All in favor? There you go.
You're done.
Have a nice night. Okay, excellent. All right, we will move on to the public session.
Excuse me, Brian.
Yes.
I have prepared the quarterly
Oh.
compliance statement. Didn't make it onto the agenda.
Oh, okay, please, yes, Doreen, please.
Okay, so you have the compliance summary is in your packets towards the end of your folder. Referring to that summary, it covers July, August, and September. The summary of green sheet submissions for the month show that of 187 received, 4 required a permit. 46 of them had wetlands on site but didn't require a permit. For incoming applications, we received 11 in July, 17 in August, and 8 in September, totaling 36 over the 3 months. Of these, 8 were eligible for agent approval. Breakdown of the bonds, 49 were requested, 16 were initiated by staff. We were able to release 30. The primary reason for not being able to release more was due to conditions, paper conditions of the permit that weren't completed. For inspections for the 3 months, we completed a total of 374 sites. For unmet deadlines set by the agency, the relocation of a shed at 21 Walker Court has not been met. The issue's been referred to the law department. 21 Birch Lane has not submitted the bond, and the plantings have partially been installed. The additional plantings are currently in progress. 32 Hettyfred Road, the fill material plantings and demarcation have not yet been completed. Work was delayed in anticipation of approval from the town tree warden, issuing approval to do restoration work on town property. The approval has now been granted, and the corrective work is begun to be mobilized. 6 Dunwoody has partially installed the required plantings. That work is nearing completion. 471 Stanwich Road has not installed their demarcation feature, and they have planted a portion of their plantings. But the homeowner reported that they have difficulty finding the planting stock. According to the owner, that stock has been brought to the nursery, and so that should be arriving on site shortly. 15 Stonebrook Lane has not yet installed the plantings or the demarcation due to a preliminary work that had to be done on the site. But their plant stock is on site, and they're prepared to plant it when that work is complete, which should be very soon. 99 Sterling Road has not yet submitted their corrective application. That will be discussed later on the agency agenda under violations. For the month of September, we had 1 violation. It was 89 Laughlin Avenue. That will also be discussed later on the agenda. 36 West Brother Drive is a violation that was issued in August for tree removal adjacent to a watercourse. The issue has been postponed by the request of the owner due to a family emergency, but that will be addressed during the October meeting. Other violations issued over the past 3 months have been addressed by receipt of an application, except 30 Sherwood Avenue. That application deadline is until September 29th. The total number of individuals served during our public counter hours over the past 3 months has exceeded 624. And finally, we welcomed LD Bailai Kabashi as our 2017-2018 intern this past Friday, and we're looking forward to a productive year working with him.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any questions for Doreen? No? Okay. Well, let's move on to the public session. The first application we have is the Town of Greenwich project, application 2017-119, Ballywick Bridge, Dewberry Engineers, Inc., for Town of Greenwich Department of Public Works, for replacement of bridge at Smith Cove. Mr. Clausy, please.
Okay, this bridge is over the Byram River. I don't know, that must have been brought over from a prior application that we looked at on Oneida Drive. This bridge, if you're familiar with Riversville Road, just north of Pexland on the left is Bailiwick Road, and there's this bridge over the Byram River. And that bridge was damaged quite severely during flooding in 2007, after which some sort of safety repairs were done, which allowed the bridge to be used, but didn't correct structural problems that had been caused by the flooding and the tough sort of location of that bridge, geometry, and the location within the 100-year floodplain. So it's taken a beating since it was first built. Public Works wants to replace the bridge. The new design has a 50-foot wide hydraulic opening under the bridge as opposed to the 32-foot existing opening. This opening will allow a 2-year storm to pass through the beneath the bridge, which is not the case at present. There are also some design features that have been built into this project that will have yield a stronger bridge that will be less likely to be damaged by storms that do hit the bridge or overtop the bridge. And the estimate is this bridge will have a 50 to 75-year service life. Let's see. You know, these bridge designs go through a lot of layers before they get to us. They go through the state DOT, they go through a lot of different reviews, and unfortunately, the bridge is located quite close to Riversville Road. There's no way to get it up out of the flood zone. There's no way to shift the increased opening under the bridge toward Riversville Road and away from what is a better woodland, part of which will have to be cleared. Revised plans were submitted. There will be replanting on the west side of the bridge where the trees will need to be removed. I believe when we sent out the staff report, I attached comments from Brian Jecker, who was the design engineer, in response to the 3 bullet points I had in my staff report. You know, I think these comments, which you have before you, are, you know, speak for themselves. Deputy Public Works Commissioner Jim Michael is here, and staff member, I don't know if Mr. Jecker is here, but if you have questions specifically about the design or why things had to be done the way they're being proposed, I recommend you ask the engineers. I believe Mr. Jecker's responses were responsive to the bullet points I had, and I recommend the agency issue a permit with the conditions in the staff report.
Okay.
The record should reflect that members Curlin, Rossi, Shundoff, and Benton went to the site.
Okay, thank you. Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. Yes, we've pretty much, as Bob said, we have a bridge that we need to replace. And we've read the staff report. We concur with all the recommendations and conditions in the staff report, and are here and open to any additional questions you may have for us.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question, Jim. The staff report refers to the proposed structure being capable of passing the 2-year storm through the 50-foot wide opening. just a simple, what if it's a 10-year storm? What happens?
What happens, it will slightly overtop a small amount.
The road or,
The road,
Yep.
yes, the road and the bridge.
Yep.
And it's in its location. We looked at trying to improve it for other storms, but because of where Riversville Road is, actually the height on the road during the 100-year storm could be in the neighborhood, when you do the hydraulic model, of about 8 feet of water. The 10-year storm only shows a few inches.
in other words, you'd have to raise the bridge
You
materially,
have to raise the bridge.
and the surrounding roadway, the
and
intersection.
surrounding roadways, including Riversville Road.
Right.
And there's several driveways along that area and so forth, and we said it's just not a feasible solution to do. So what we've done in the design is to reinforce the bridge so that it will withstand the ability to overtop and withstand any potential debris impacts of that by reinforcing it during those storms, so that as the water comes up, overtops it, and it'll go down. We still have a bridge left, which is not what happened in 2007.
All right, I guess I'm just concerned that if we had a material hurricane come through here, which is not unusual, we haven't had one for many years, and we have, heavy amount of rain for multiple days, does that mean that road would be impassable for multiple days? Could be?
It could be. There is a emergency access point to that subdivision through the Bailiwick Club.
Right.
So there is
okay.
a secondary access point that's only open during emergency situations, but during, for instance, during Sandy and
Right.
Irene, we did open that area so that in the event that road became impassable and we couldn't get to it, people in that area had a.
So there is a backstop.
Secondary
Good. Good.
point of egress.
That's what I was thinking.
Okay,
Okay.
good. That's basically my question as well. Any other questions for the applicant? No? Public questions or comments on this application? Okay. I'm sorry, yes?
Yeah, my name is Peter Alexander.
Okay,
landscape architect.
okay.
And I was wondering if,
Could you come up and speak into the mic, please?
excuse me, Peter Alexander, landscape architect, live downstream from this. Did you consider any of the flood attenuation plans that have been developed north of there? There was an issue.
I guess I'm unclear on exactly what you're referring to.
Do you know what flood attenuation is?
This is, he's
yeah.
allowed to examine the.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You had a comment?
You either have to come up
You-
and register your comments and tell us what it is your position is or what are you objecting
Right.
to.
Oh, it's just
But you're not
one.
entitled to examine the
Oh,
representative.
okay, sorry.
But you can certainly explore whatever issues you want.
Did you have something you wanted to add to your statement about likely wetland impacts from this
Question
project?
Was there any consideration for upstream flood attenuation? There are a
Okay.
number of plans that have been developed since the parkway was built,
Okay.
and I was just wondering if that was a factor.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, we always look at other alternatives when we do these plans. We looked at a variety of different aspects. And when we look at this, this is strictly for a bridge replacement
Right.
project. That's a much larger scale project.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you. Any other public questions or comments on this? Okay. Would someone like to make a motion on this application?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Two items on the consent agenda 2017-12344 Cariglia Drive and Granoff Architects for Eileen Rosella for an invasive plant restoration plan and a walking path 25 feet from wetlands. And secondly, 2017-124-7 Cariglia Drive, Conti and Conti Landscape Architects for Patricia Black, Cariglia 7 LLC for an invasive plant restoration plan in a wetland. Are there any questions or comments on those two applications? No. Okay. Is there a motion?
Motion approved.
All in favor? Oh, is there a second? You're going to second? All in favor? All right, okay. Very good. On to new applications. 2017-112, 13 Wickham Hill Lane. Let's see, Jamshed Asami for partial hydro raking of Wickham Hill Pond. Ms. Sesto, please.
In the, I don't know what's this, within the application documents. Okay, so you'll have to refer to what's in your packets. So this is a proposed hydro raking project for Babcock Pond, which is jointly owned by 4 or 5 different property owners. This access would be gained through 9 Wickham Hill Lane, despite the location being 13. The purpose of hydro raking the pond is to remove accumulated organic debris, increase the depth to some element, certainly not the same as dredging. The hydro raking would occur at the periphery of the pond, and I suspect the applicant can speak to that more directly. Since the staff report was written, the neighbors have provided their authorization to go forward with this. There is discussion within the documents that speaks to the staging area being considered in different locations. The Solitude report notes that the staging area is going to be north and west of the offloading site. Solitude subsequently provided a map which looks like this in your packet. It goes with, it would have come in your Thursday packet, which provides the indication of where the access road would go, and then 2 side areas of staging. So this access road goes through a wooded lot, portion, not a lot, property lot, but a section of woodland shared by 2 property owners. Itself would be about 12 feet wide, gravel. Some small trees have to come down to facilitate that. But when you get down closer to the pond, that's where the planning was a little less clear on what was going to take place. These 50 by 50 foot areas that were submitted subsequent to the staff report, there is no indication of how many trees need to be taken down, what the purpose of those areas are for, and then what the restoration plan for that. Likewise, alternatives to this is the access point. There was no discussion provided of why this section was selected. This is a good wooded section, and you look around, the arrows around the pond, while the pond as a whole has a good wooded buffer, there are some other properties with perhaps a lighter forested canopy than where the access is coming in. And even within this location, out on the site, if the access area shifted, you could avoid removing some trees that are on the shoreline. So greater discussion has to take place with regards to how this was chosen and what. This falls within the public drinking water supply watershed. We have not received notice from the applicant that the water company was notified. The Goslin report highlights the need to manage the watershed. We hear time and time again, people come in with ponds with various problems, and we also know the watershed dynamics of the property management decisions that feed this pond are part of its problem. But it's unclear that this very valid point that Mr. Goslin brought up, is it in fact part of the pond, the overall pond management strategy, or just a nice idea? More details are needed with regards to the time of year the hydro rating will be completed, and a discussion of if from that targeted time frame what was it that led Solitude to choosing that time? How does it disrupt wildlife or facilitate logistically their plans for dredging? So at this point, a delay in action is being recommended to give the applicant more time to address these concerns.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone from the applicant here tonight? Hi, Jim.
Good evening, everyone. I actually have the,
You could introduce yourself.
oh,
please.
sorry. My name is Emily from Solitude, and this is Jeff.
Jeff Castellani.
Castellani from Solitude.
Okay,
And I just have the form that was supposed to be sent to the Department of Public Health, and I have confirmation that we emailed it. And I also have the confirmation that we sent with the green card to the Aquarian Water Supply that I wanted to give to you. So I just wanted to give them to you in person, and then we can discuss further questions.
okay.
So I know that one of the issues that came up was the number of trees that we would have to remove to get down to the water, and we actually took a site visit because we're about 2.5 hours away. So we were able to go there before the meeting tonight, and we actually looked to the right where you proposed that open area, and there is a fence there, and we talked to Irene, and she said if that's a better alternative, she's open to taking her fence down. And if we did that, it goes from taking down about 50 trees to about 8. So that would be much easier. And these are all small saplings, about 1 to 2 inches. They're not big trees. They're pioneer species going down. So we would just have to remove 8 small trees, 1 to 2 inches. And then there was about 12 rocks, kind of bouldery type rocks that we would have to remove with equipment. And then we would put the gravel road down like proposed. And that would go all the way down. So I know Pat's the only one that's been there, but it would,
Sorry, I should note that members Curlin, Rossi, Shundoff, and Benton were out to the site as well.
okay, awesome,
Thank
awesm.
you.
So, whoever knows, you'd go down and then as soon as it starts to get a little bit more shrubs and the bush gets a little more dense, you turned right. And if you saw the fence with the door right there, we would just remove that back. And then there's a whole open grassland right there. And then we would just go right through there with the gravel road and then remove the fence door on the other side. And then right there, there's about 2 feet of water. So it'd be perfect for offload procedures. And that would be way easier in regards to conserving the land. So we would like to change the project description to really try and preserve that area. And I'm just thinking, what else?
So the entirety of the access road is shifting, not just the end portion, but all the way from the driveway? You would just come in?
So we would still come in the same way. I'm gonna have to revise that and send you a
Yes.
better map so you can actually see, but you'll go in straight where that is, but then you'll curve right into her fenced-in meadow area.
Okay.
And then you would just curve into the little cove there where the water is. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll revise that map so you can see it better.
Very good, thank you.
Excuse me. So also additionally, we had proposed a mini excavator at the shoreline, and we were going to scoop the material off a flat surface barge. But based on the way we would want to swing the excavator, in order not to take out trees right at the shoreline, we'd actually propose that we put a different type of barge in that has a conveyor system on. Most people know it as an aquatic weed harvester. And the hydro-rake would place the material on the aquatic weed harvester. The aquatic weed harvester would go to the shoreline and then offload it from the conveyor right into a front-end loader bucket so that we minimize the disturbance at the shoreline also. And then the only other thing is based on that scenario, we're able to put the dewatering or the spoil pile for dewatering farther away from the shoreline in that as Emily described it, a grassland area or just a mixed vegetation area that's at least 150 feet away from the shoreline in order to dewater.
Very good.
Sorry. I know you were looking for a restoration plan. If we count the number of trees, we're willing to do whatever you're looking for, but regarding if we know the number of trees and we replant and we restore the road back to what it was, is that what you're kind of looking for?
The number of trees in some regards going to be a function, so if you were to take down a 10-inch with a big canopy,
Right.
replacing that with a 2-inch doesn't quite match up.
Exactly.
So that's something, if you want to call, we can discuss what
Okay, yeah, that's
appropriate.
perfect.
Okay. Okay. And then you had the, what time of, question here about the timing of the hydro raking? 0.8, I guess.
Usually, we like to do it early fall, mid-fall, just before, especially turtles start their hibernation, because they do use the shallow areas in order to find a place to hibernate. Or spring, mid-spring, after we know that hibernation has, the turtles aren't hibernating more and they're active. Those are the two, and then any time in between that. The only thing we like to stay away from also is spawning of aquatic life too, which, depending on water temperature in the region, could be anywhere from, mid-May to late June.
Got it, okay. So you're proposing them to do this activity immediately or in the spring?
Well,
This
I mean,
point?
because of the process of putting in the fabric in the road, it's not something that I think we can do immediately.
So you're thinking April?
I'm
or-
thinking we'd be better off trying to plan this for the spring rather than trying to squeeze it into a fall, at least this fall.
Okay, fair enough. Any other questions? Any public questions or comments? I guess I'd like to propose, it seems that the answers here are pretty good. It seems like you got the rest of the filings.
We still need a plan.
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
still substantial
I'm just wondering
information
whether
that has
this
to
is-
be
We delay this.
worked out.
Okay, so we should delay this as opposed to allow it to become a consent item potentially on the next
Well, they
agenda?
can determine whether they want to make it a consent.
Right, right.
We just-
Okay,
Yeah, we gotta see the plan that they're representing.
okay.
Make a motion to delay.
Okay, fair enough. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
The second one? Okay.
Okay. Okay, item number 2, 2017-113, 5 Glendale Street, SLS Construction for Kristen Paradise for Correction Action Restoration Plan. Doreen, please.
Okay. This application is to correct a clearing violation along a watercourse. The owner proactively alerted staff that the violation occurred and has been very prompt and responsive with the submission of the corrective application. The revised planting plan is acceptable and will restore the cleared area. The owner is here. Oh, there are conditions of approval that have been provided in the staff report. The owner is here and would like to make a request of the agency members.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Jeff Paradise. Thanks for seeing me tonight. I came earlier in the year and forgot to ask for relief. We're asking for relief from the fine of $3,000 that we would like to put, instead of paying the fine, put that towards the, to pay for the plants and everything that we need to restore. And also ask for relief from the bond also, because, I called the agency and I called Doreen, and I want to thank Doreen publicly because she's been great and she's helped us and walked us through this whole process. So we called to ask, to say, hey, look at, after I talked to my contractor, he said, look, you got to stop. I called to make sure, because I wanted to point out that we did this and we were fully accepting of whatever, but we just want, because every dollar is so precious at this point, we're asking for relief on the two.
All righty. So we have, now, Doreen and staff, is the, it's a filing fee. Is the planting plan reflect an additional $3,000 worth of plantings on this, or is it something we would expect?
We do not, it doesn't, it's not up to that, that price range. We would require the bond and
Right.
hold that for that period of time, 2 years.
So you want relief for the fee? Is that what-
There's
So
a
we're asking for
violation filing fee,
The additional
Yeah.
filing fee,
And the bond.
right.
right.
He's not asking for relief from the bond, just the filing fee, which is triple. I apologize if you asked for bond, I didn't hear that.
No, I'm
Yeah,
just,
you're saying-
we're asking for relief from the fine. I'm sorry,
It's a filing fee.
It's a filing
Filing
fee, it's
fee.
not a fine.
But it's triple the normal fee, is that correct?
Right.
Yes. All right. But
I'm quite, you had to put a couple $100,000 on the line and I get a little bit nervous.
It would be the difference between a normal filing fee and the triple. So $1,000 versus $3,000. Is that what we're talking about?
Correct.
That's correct, it's 1,500, so it would be 4,500. So he already submitted the original bond of
He's paid
50.
the
I mean,
$1,500 already.
Yes,
And this is another $3,000 on top of that.
that's correct.
Gotcha.
And you would put the additional 3 you'd put into the planting plan?
Whatever, we're in the process of going to buy everything and then the process of buying everything and then
Right.
to do the work to make sure that it comes up to code and then making sure that if things don't make it, then we have to replant those to make sure everything, if anything dies off.
Well, that's
we
the
wanna make-
bond. Yeah, that's the
That-
function of the bond.
Right.
Is,
Well, that-
So we understand the bond portion of it, but I just,
So, I understand your position of wanting to put the money into the planting plan. Pretty much everybody who stands up there would rather put the money into the planting
Right.
plan than the violation. For me, the more compelling argument is that you brought this to the attention of the agency,
Exactly.
and that, for me, carries the weight.
Right.
And that makes this something different than
Right.
anybody who wants to put the money towards the
I
planting
would
plan.
move that we eliminate the
eliminate the 3.
3,000.
Okay. Is there a second on
Second.
that?
I second that.
All in favor of eliminating the 3,000
I
filing fee?
Yeah, I guess.
However, the bond, and then your second request on the bond, I'm not going to, I can't support that because that's if the plans fail,
Yeah.
that's
I understand.
you sell.
I totally understand.
And if everything works, you get it back.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay.
But don't, we have to vote on the application?
The application? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there, you want to make a motion on the application?
Motion to approve the application.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Would you like to take out the condition that requires $3,000 to be submitted?
Minus-
Yes.
So it is.
Take that off.
Minus the condition that requires a $3,000 additional filing fee. Okay, all in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor? Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on.
Quickly.
Next is 2017-114, 61 Sawmill, SE Minor and Company, Inc., for David and Ingrid Hang, for replacement of the pool house, patios, and garage 1 foot from wetlands. Ms. Sesto, please.
Okay, can we make the figure? So this is a project to remove an existing pool and construct a new pool house, patios, and the existing garage would be replaced as well. The stream that runs through the property is bound by a retaining wall here along this west side, and in here is the existing pool, and this darker area would be the proposed new pool. The new pool rests largely on the existing hardscape of the patio of the current pool, although the pool house with the existing pool comes up a little bit shy of this footprint, so there is some intrusion beyond the existing footprint. Additionally, the area of the existing pool in here is proposed to be lawn. So the questions and concerns I have associated with that, this site is comprised of steep slope and ledge leading to the Rock Lake Brook corridor, which the applicant appropriately states is a high-valued watercourse. I'm concerned that there'll be some difficulties in monitoring the erosion controls during construction, and that could lead to direct impacts to that intermittent stream. So the applicant should address how often they plan to monitor this element of the project. The pool area redevelopment is enlarged to the north, immediately adjacent to this high-quality brook. 3 mature trees have been removed. That looks like it's fairly recent, like within the last year, but they show evidence of heart rot, and I don't think that that removal of those trees constitutes a violation. The loss of these trees should not, though, be the basis for assessing how the hardscape could and should migrate north. Instead, the planting plan should restore this area with new trees. As proposed, the redevelopment would include 1,200 square feet of lawn immediately adjacent to Rock Lake Brook and consume another 500 square feet of that woodland edge 10 feet from the brook. No alternatives were presented, which allows the evaluator to understand why something else could not be proposed that meets the applicant's needs but does not enlarge the hardscape and does not introduce a negative landscape features such as lawn in such close proximity to a high-quality watercourse.
Okay.
A call for silt fencing to be extended, and the applicant should provide additional details regarding the stone wall construction methodology immediately behind the house to substantiate why no erosion controls were needed down gradient of this work. Should the agency find the reconfigured pool area acceptable, I recommend that lawn not be developed in the old pool and patio area, and a detailed planting plan should be provided dealing with the treatment of this area. Construction fence or other visual barrier should be incorporated on the north side of the pool garage to define the limited workspace, and tree protection should also be identified in this area. So with this, I do have a recommendation to delay. Just prior to the meeting, additional mapping was submitted, which did not have the opportunity to review before this meeting. I'm sure Mr. Liebman will be speaking to that.
Okay, thank you.
Colored planting plan. Hi, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the agency. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I just, if we can zoom into that, to the area of development on
I
those
was going
plans.
to put up
that'd be great.
something different, the new stuff to this, so I can talk you through it. Okay? That one, that's perfect. If we can go up, that would be great, Doreen. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the agency, Larry Liebman from SE Minor, representing the applicant. We know that we just submitted new information to you, but I can respond to all of the questions that was in the staff report with regard to the steep slopes and how we plan to monitor during construction. There will be photographs taken by the project manager daily. Our office will inspect the project weekly. If staff and the agency desires that we submit all of that information to you on a weekly basis, then so be it. That's what we will do. The planting plan that is now there, that has now been re-looked at by the landscape architect, was to push. We pulled the pool down as much as we possibly could. The applicant is a is a swimmer who swims for, what I was told is 8 strokes and a flip. I don't really know what all of that means, but that's what she does. And so we were trying to figure out the best way to place the pool. The other area below where it is lawn is a croquet area. That's their other passion, is that they needed some place a flat area to do croquet. And so that's here. All of these all of this other issues have been the planting that has gone and to protect not only the brook, but to minimize the amount of lawn disturbance. We also have on the site plans that we submitted just today, and I understand that they were submitted just today, the erosion control does go from, does encompass the entire work area and comes all the way down and all the way across and back down also in the front. It'll be a double row of silt fence with the stone as what I normally prescribe. And then the construction fence on the northern side, that's just a line on a plan that is on the new plans that are there now. So what we will be doing is, again, is the existing pool that's in here, we try to move it down to get the applicant what they wanted, though to moving it down further would just take that one corner and push it closer to the wetland. Okay, if we try to utilize the same exact area or utilize the area where the pool, the existing pool is. And that was the applicant's desires. We have submitted revised plans from the landscape architect, revised plans from the architect, and revised plans from SE Minor. And obviously, we know that you want to review them, and I'm here to answer any questions.
The other side of the house has extensive lawn already. How come a croquet court can't go there?
Because it has extensive lawn already, but it's not flat. It has pieces of ledge rock. At least that's what I asked that same question this afternoon, okay? That back in there. And they're just wanting to make it because there's a difference in elevation. It's 10 feet from up here to down here. So it's just to kind of combine the two sport areas together.
Yeah,
as
but
well.
the front is pretty flat. I mean, it might not be croquet flat, but it's not 20% slope or anything crazy like that.
But this is going to be really flat because it's existing hardscape and we're taking out the hardscape.
But you're adding hardscape. I mean, there's a net gain in hardscape.
I will go back to the applicant and ask them, since you're just reviewing it, to say if there's another place for that. And then what you're asking me is to go and to take all of this area that's here that was in hardscape and replant it. Is that what your suggestion is? So I know what to say to the applicant.
That is an alternative worth pursuing. You could also slide the pool further south.
Sliding, as I just said, sliding the pool further south would go and bring the edge of the pool in closer towards the wetland. But
So
we'll look
the
at
edge of
that.
the pool is already, I mean, you're talking a couple feet at that point. And the land
it's
to the
ze-
north.
And the hardscape currently on the existing conditions is 0. It's there right now on the edge. So
This is more important back here than this over here. There's a retaining wall here. So to have this pool slide down, have less lawn, and better protection for this naturally vegetated area,
I will bring that
That's
to the,
an
I will bring that
alternative
to the,
worth
I will
pursuing.
bring that to the applicant and express that that was your desire.
it's an alternative worth pursuing, and it's,
I understand.
Okay.
Thank you.
The pool could always be moved to the west as well, couldn't it? To the left.
Not with setbacks, because then it's not completely behind the rear of the building. Yes, it can be shifted some as well.
Okay, and my other question was, what is the maintenance routine for a croquet court? Does the grass have to be absolutely flat? Is there going to be fertilizer?
I'm going to say yes. I am not,
Well,
I am not going to propose that I know much about
say it's
professional
similar to a-
My
croquet.
concern is the fertilization and the maintenance of a croquet court
Thank you, sir.
right next to a high-quality wetland
Thank you, sir.
and the runoff.
I will bring that to the applicant's attention.
Very good.
And I should note that members Curlin, Rossi, Shondoff, and Benton were at the site today.
Did you bring your ballots?
And this is a high-quality water course, and something to bear in mind, the site is fully developed. The balance between development and preservation of the resource has long been met. So, I would encourage caution in imposing on this water course any further.
Any other agency questions?
Larry, do you gain anything, considering these suggestions have been made, do you gain anything by changing the orientation of the pool?
No, sir. No, sir.
I mean,
Because of the grade.
Just
Right.
turn it.
Yes, sir.
Public questions or comments on this application? Someone like to make a motion?
Motion to delay?
Is there a second? All in favor? Okay, thank you. See you next month.
Mr. Chairman, the next item, I pray that you delay that item, please.
So, application 2017-115 or 293 and 297 Lake Avenue, SE Minor Inc. for 293 Lake Avenue LLC and 297 Lake Avenue LLC for replacement of a water line crossing a stream. Pat is requested delay. Did you want to make any comments prior to that?
I leave it to the agency if you wanted me to introduce the project this evening, or just wait till we're ready to go.
I think we can wait.
Wait.
Okay. I'll make a motion to delay. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
I have the next one, too, so let's do it.
Can't get rid of you. Okay. Okay, next one is 2017-116, 30 Vineyard Lane, SE Minor and Company, Inc., for Regina Kudoyarova for construction of retaining wall 7 feet from wetlands. Doreen, please.
Okay. The homeowner is seeking to maintain a relocated dry stack stone wall that's roughly 4 feet in height. They want to extend it 48 feet northward and install restoration plantings in and adjacent to the wetland. The wall was reconstructed according to the homeowner because it was cracked and poorly constructed and for aesthetic purposes. 6 dogwoods are proposed to be planted above the wall, with the area below them being maintained as lawn. The area of disturbance is located to the west side of the northern driveway. The original demarcating stone wall was about 25 to 35 feet from the wetland, and it was implemented as part of a permit for the construction of the residence and the associated activity. The current one has been relocated closer to the wetland. The wall, the distance from the wetland of the new wall varies, but it gets no closer than 8 feet to the wetland. The applicant hasn't provided compelling information to justify reducing the buffer to the wetland. The agency members should consider whether or not they would have approved this adjustment of the wall if it was provided to us in advance. Conditions have been provided to restore the original wall. If the agency members choose to maintain allow the original wall to be maintained, unless the applicant presents adequate justification, there are conditions provided. If the applicant wants to maintain it and the agency finds that it's justifiable, these conditions should be deleted.
Thank you.
Same 4 members were at this site as well.
Okay. Welcome back.
Thank you. Again, Larry Liebman from SE Minor. I'm going to pass around 2 photos of what the wall looked like. Previously, it wasn't really a wall. Unfortunately, the contractor that was hired did not start at the wall and do. He just did enough room that he could get his equipment in. And I like to pass those around. The applicant obviously is looking and hoping that the agency will allow them to keep the wall where it is, and then refinish the wall the way that it's been proposed. There really wasn't a wall that was there previously. It really was just it was just a bunch of boulders that were in a line. Obviously, it is my, and I've said this to the agency before, this area has been impacted multiple times now by the course of the construction. And I don't, if to remove the wall and pull it back to 7 feet, because the distance that it was, the closest distance or the furthest distance from the old wall, that differential is about 7 feet. To move that that's what it was previously. That's the previous wall, not the new wall. The new wall is, do I have a picture of the new wall? I did, as part of the application, I just found the ones of what it looked like. That's what was released with the bond when the house was originally constructed. Okay, I'm sorry I didn't bring photographs with that because this one is also scheduled for a delay, so that can happen. Right. The compelling reason of building it, I know that we put in our application aesthetics because that's what the applicant told us. And then in further review and going to try to find the other, what was approved and what it looked like previously, it clearly, the applicant was also talking about some safety issues about the fact of coming off there. But again, they have to throw themselves at the mercy of doing the application without the benefit of a permit. So I would compel you to consider not making them move the wall and then just rebuilding the wall and coming out as further as we can. And if there's more plantings that would help, then so be it, that will be okay. Or you tell me that I should redesign the planting plan and the plan to move the wall. I'm looking for direction, please.
I've got a question for you, Larry. So I get you saying the stones that were there were not as aesthetically pleasing as the wall. Was there a function associated with those old stones? Were those supposed to be the limit of lawn?
That's what was approved as the boulder demarcation, or at least the limit of landscaping and grading that was done when the house was constructed originally. Okay, and so that was there, and then he just moved it. Like I said, the furthest point that it moved is about 7 feet, and then the wall, so it's 2 more feet that way for when they constructed it. I wish that I had a better applications in front of you this evening. But there's 2 more to go. We got 2 more to go, so. I'm just looking for some direction of what I should tell my client as well as.
Mr. Lehman, regardless of where the old wall actually was, you have a permit that was issued in 2004 that indicated where the wall should have been.
And that's where it was. That's where it was, where the bond was released, where those boulders were, and then the new owners came.
Right, and so there's no compelling reason that the wall should have been moved, correct?
Besides the fact that they considered it to be a safety issue with it dropping off the way that it did, the way that it looks in those photographs, there's no other compelling reason between that and aesthetics.
Okay, well, personally, I would like to.
And they went and built it close.
Right. So personally, I'd like to see it back where it was approved in 2004. It's my personal position.
I would ask that if that is the entire agency's recommendation, or is that just Mr. Benton's recommendation?
I'd have to agree on that as well.
I guess then that's the entire agency's recommendation.
Majority of which.
And I will be back,
So we have a
I will give
motion.
you new plans showing it moved back to the original location and the planting plan revised accordingly.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
thank you.
Your motion to delay.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor? Okay. Okay, hold on 1 second. Okay. Next on the agenda is 2017-117, 21 Cat Rock Road, Rocco V. DeAndrea, Inc., for Oliver and Melissa Nissenson for replacing a deck and patio 18 feet from wetlands. Mr. Clausy, please.
There. Members Curlin, Rossi, and Shundoff attended this site. Mr. Benton left us.
All right. 21 Cat Rock Road was a vacant parcel until the mid-1990s, and when it was developed, the agency set some pretty stringent limitations on the development and the sort of layout in relation to the wetland. There was a, Doreen, could you zoom in on the sort of detailed side of that, please? There's a low freestanding wall right behind the house, and that's part of what was the demarcation feature between the house, or the residential landscape use of the property, and the plus or, 35-foot or less buffer. I mean, when you really look at the plan, I mean, there are places where it wasn't 35 feet. And at the end of that wall, there was a boulder demarcation feature that ran around to the south and east over here. Looking at the property for the review of this application, staff found that about 90-foot or so section of that boulder demarcation was no longer on site, and the buffer under some mature canopy trees was being maintained pretty much as a lawn up into the wetland here, this little wedge area. This situation was pointed out to the applicant. They came back with a revised planting plan. I don't know if you have that one. To restore the entire boulder demarcation and do a pretty intensive planting along the back of the boulders and that low freestanding wall, and plant some understory trees in the wetland and buffer. I would note that there was a prior clearing issue on the property since the house was built, and a review in 2000 by the agency allowed for the restoration, quote-unquote, restoration of the buffer by requiring that it be allowed to revert to a natural state. So, this is a pretty intensive planting plan with 260 container-grown perennials, 52 shrubs, and a number of understory trees of pretty good size. The question came up sort of when the encroachment and the boulder demarcation elimination happened. We have correspondence from the property owner saying that that was the condition of the property they found when they bought the property in 2016. So I think the issue here is we're looking at a slight encroachment into what had been the buffer by just this little bump of the terrace. Personally, I don't think this is a big deal if the buffer and wetland are restored and maintained in the future in a natural state. The edge of the terrace can serve as the edge of the landscape use of the property. But I'd like to hear from the applicant how they see this, what their rationale for this is, why the terrace has to be this shape into the buffer, and also consider whether the restoration plan is intensive enough to do a permanent restoration of the buffer and wetland. I did recommend delay I do have conditions of approval if the agency, at the end of the discussion, decides they want to move forward with this.
Okay, thank you, Bob. Welcome.
Good evening. Tony DeAndrea representing Oliver and Melissa Nissenson, who are the owners. They did purchase the property in May of 2016. They have 2 children and apparently 1 more on the way, and they realized that they need a little bit more room other than the elevated deck rather than to accommodate that passive recreation, if you will. They retained Seth Tysers of the firm of Tysers and Benedict to develop a plan, which included the proposal to construct a patio at grade, basically, that would extend off the end of the house, the eastern end of the house, and accommodate an access then from the existing elevated deck, which would be reconstructed, and then transition down to the patio at grade. The area above the septic system to the east of the house would remain as is, and the way Seth designed the patio, we were able to grade it softly down to the existing grade adjacent. When it became apparent that there had been an encroachment by others previously, and there had been correspondence in the file about that restoration plan, it became apparent that we should enhance the restoration. Originally, Seth's plan had included an extensive amount of landscaping. What it didn't have is restoration or replacement of the original boulder wall that followed the contour to the east of the home. So what Seth has designed in the landscape plan now, in addition to an extensive landscape plan of bushes, shrubs, and additional large trees, he's reinstituted the boulder wall along the original boundary, which is just to the north of the proposed patio. Seth is here to describe it in more detail if necessary. The increase of the entire property is about 700 square feet. The runoff from the patio will travel overland through the buffer into the large expansive wetland area to the north. That's really it in a nutshell as to what we've described. It's a modest improvement to the site, a major significant improvement to the restoration plan that apparently was not completed during the last review of, I guess, a violation of sorts. Mr. Nissenson is here if you wanted to ask any questions specifically. Seth is also here to speak specifically about the landscape plan.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I would like to hear more about the reinstating the boulder demarcation feature. I'm looking at Plan L1, and it looks like it's just sort of a couple clumps of boulders as opposed to a consistent demarcation.
On the highlighted plan from Seth, and he can speak to it more directly, he's actually shown boulders all the way along the edge of the patio, which is highlighted here in gray, and that'll be on the north side of the patio. And then it continues to the east, following the contour of approximately, let me just make sure, about elevation 60.
Okay.
And adjacent to the boulders, then, he has also dense plantings, which he can describe in more detail. But that's the idea, is that you have a boulder demarcation that's very prominent, following a contour, blending back into the eastern end, which is remaining, and also blending back into the original wall that was and still intact from the original permit on the north side of the house.
Okay.
So now we have a continuous ribbon of boulder or wall to define that limit.
Okay.
Sure, I can talk a little bit about the mitigation planting plan. I'm Seth Tysers, by the way. So directly behind this boulder wall, we have an 8 to 10 foot wide planted buffer consisting of native wetland shrubs and perennials, all kinds of different shapes, colors, and sizes. Close to the tree line here, we show 7 trees. We have 3 redbuds, 3 service berries, and a flowering dogwood. And this entire area within here, which currently consists of a lawn, is going to be converted to a wetland meadow. Overall, it's about 5,800 square feet of wetland mitigation.
Is there anyone else on the board have any questions
I have a question.
on this? Please.
Can the patio be pulled back to the west?
The patio was positioned really at the eastern end of the home.
Right.
And it provides for a transition down from the elevated house, first floor, basically, down some stairs onto that patio. So we're basically as far west as we can go. There is also a walkout elevation, which is now being lost by the construction of the patio, of the deck. So really, Mr. Elliott, the proposal is to walk out of the living quarters onto the deck, down onto the patio where they can actually have some place to do something at ground level.
I understand all that, but it seems that the patio can still be moved about 10 feet west without losing any of that.
Oh, you want it west up the hill?
Yeah.
The reason we can't, I'm sorry, I was anticipating going to the house. Going to the west up the hill, we start to encroach with the septic tank. So we've set the upper level, the western edge of the wall to comply with the setback of 10 feet from the septic tank. That eliminates, and what we've done here, we have basically a retaining wall along the west, so we don't change the grade in any place along the septic system. That was critical. And then a couple of steps down to get to that patio to minimize the amount of earthwork. So there's very little earthwork being done, low-profile wall to the west, blending into the hillside and not touching any of the septic system, which was a critical design consideration.
Right, and if we can't move it to the west, if we move the eastern end, in other words, made the patio a bit smaller, we could eliminate the bump out.
The little bump out is actually stairs to get back up to the elevation on the eastern or.
I thought the bump out was on the east.
There's two. Oh, the bump out here. That's just a focal place for recreation. It does have proposal for a fire pit. We're basically at grade at that point.
That's your grading.
Yeah.
One thing I wanted to mention with that bump out is that there is a fire pit centered in that bump out.
Yeah.
And we just felt if the fire pit were in the middle of the terrace, it wouldn't be as usable. This creates a separate area to sit around the fire pit from the rest of the area where we could have tables and chairs where they could eat and hang out, the 5 members of the family and their friends. But by bumping this out, this creates a separate area where people can be out of the way and sit around the fire.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, I guess my other question, I met with Mr. Seth while he was developing this, and we discussed the understory trees here in the lawn area. My question is there any room for any other trees that wouldn't sort of detract or suppress the meadow grass growth? I mean, is there a place you could stick another canopy tree or another 2 understory trees? I'm just trying to see if given the history on this is the second go-round of encroachment, if you really beef it up as much as you can to have your meadow, have your recreational space, but keep them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's space for at least another 1 or 2 trees. And I could speak with you if there are any specific varieties that you'd recommend. We'd be happy to listen to that.
I would say that the meadow grass is going to have a tough time. There's a good amount of the Japanese stilt grass out there, which I think is going to, it doesn't care about trees, doesn't care about anything. So I think that's going to be a real tough battle for you.
Yeah, we want to overseed the area with a specific seed mix that I have on the plan. And we could have sort of a maintenance plan attached to this as well, where you reseed every year for a certain amount of time. I know meadows are difficult to maintain, though.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, the conditions of approval, the draft conditions did have a meadow mowing no more than once a year. So, mowing the meadow can actually at least, give other plants a chance against stilt grass. A lot of times you see the stilt grass, when it's really dominant, it's in the unmaintained forest understory, and it's never mowed. So,
Yeah, we'd be happy to have a maintenance agreement, mow once a year, late in the fall, that kind of a thing. Keep the woody material down.
Okay.
Last question for Bob.
Sure.
Bob, given the discussion, would you now change your recommendation to approve?
Yeah, I think a boulder wall or a stone patio at grade, it's rocks, it's
Right.
not going to
Okay.
be fertilized, it's not going to have any
Okay.
real impact.
Okay, fine.
Any public questions or comments on this? Okay. Elliot, you want to take a shot?
Yeah, motion to approve with the special conditions Bob has recommended for this application.
Second.
I would amend that with the addition of the 2 trees to be worked out with staff,
Absolutely.
and the maintenance of one time.
Maintenance plan. Yep,
All right,
all the above.
okay. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is 2017-120 Angus Lane, Spath Björklund Associates, Inc., for Calhoun Drive Association, Inc., for excavation in existing drainage channels along Angus Lane. Doreen, if you would, please.
Okay. The applicant is proposing to excavate an accumulation of sediment and debris that's approximately 6 to 8 inches in depth for a total of about 60 cubic yards from a drainage swale, that's about 325 linear feet, located on the southern end of Angus Lane. This will allow for improvement of drainage flow, minimize any property damage, and ensure safety. There's small saplings and shrubs and herbaceous vegetation that impede flow, which will be removed from within the stream channel as part of this dredging operation. No vegetation is proposed to be restored other than reseeding the banks and the surrounding area. The material will be excavated utilizing a mini excavator. The dredge spoils will be deposited directly into a lined dump truck and removed from the site. The work's proposed to take about a week or so. Provided that the erosion controls are installed throughout the course of the activity and until the area is stabilized, and the work's restricted to periods of low flow, the activity is not likely to have a lasting impact on the stream corridor or off-site wetlands. It's recommended that the agency approve with the conditions that are provided in the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Doreen. Is anyone from the applicant here to?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. My name is Dave Bjorklund. I'm with Spath Bjorklund Associates. I'll be glad to answer any questions. This is pretty straightforward. I think Doreen's report has summed it up quite adequately.
Okay, so no questions, comments, issues on the staff report?
No.
Okay. Are there any agency questions for Mr. Bjorklund?
Just, when would the work be done?
We'd like to get to it as soon as possible because, boy, this is a perfect time. If flows were ever low, it's right now.
Right.
But
Okay.
we've agreed with Doreen that we're going to keep in close touch, and when we do get closer to performing the work, to make sure that it's still a low-flow time.
Okay, and the spoils will be taken off-site. Is there any testing that needs to be done of the soils? Just make sure that they're,
Because it's a
Opposed to-
small area, it's not likely that there are contaminated soils. I didn't recommend it as a condition.
okay, very good. Any other agency questions? Public questions or comments? Motion to approve on the table. Is there a second? Okay, all in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next up, application 2017-122, 777 West Putnam Avenue, Gilbride Tusa Laston Spillane LLC for 777 West Putnam Avenue, LLC for construction of a new multifamily building, including stream bank stabilization. Mr. Clausy, please.
Okay, I understand some of the agency members visited the site today.
That would be
Yep.
Curling, Rossi, Shondoff, and Bennett.
Okay.
As those folks know, if they didn't know already, this is a commercial site. It's about 8.5 acres in size. It straddles the New York state line, about half an acre is in New York, and the rest is in Connecticut. The southern third of the site is occupied by an office building, and most of the balance of the property is a paved parking lot. There's, between the Byram River, which is the jurisdictional resource we're talking about this evening, and the edge of the parking lot, the western edge, it's about 45 feet. The applicant proposes to build a multifamily building over the northern part of the parking lot, and the edge of the building would not extend further than the existing pavement of the parking lot to the west, so it's about 45 feet from the river. The first floor of the building will be elevated above the parking lot, which will still be used as a parking lot. This gets the structure out of the 100-year flood zone. Okay. So there will be a 6,000 square foot increase in impervious coverage created by the project, and there is a drainage report. The calculations, summary tables there show that there would be a decrease or no change in peak runoff rates and volumes through the 100-year storm. And the pervious pavement system that they're proposing to use would greatly improve the quality of water that's discharged from the site. At the present time, you've got a huge parking lot and no water quality except some catch basins with sumps that are not really that deep. DPW Engineering Division has looked at the drainage design and found them to be acceptable in concept. Now, that's a term they use when there are some revisions that are needed, because we submit we get the first application of all the land use agencies. We're the agency that submits it to DPW. They're looking at all kinds of things when they look at it for us. They're looking at turning radiuses. They're looking at site distance. They're looking at a lot of things that we're not really responsible for. Of the things that the agency's responsible for, it seems to me that the comments, the revisions or additional information DPW needs is of a minor, it's minor in nature. So it's not something that I would say is requires a holding it up based solely on that. Along with the pervious pavement, the applicant does propose some green roof. There's a September 15th addendum to the drainage report that has a little sketch of where they think this, couple thousand square feet of green roof would go. That's a bonus. That's not included in the drainage summary calculations. That's going to be a bonus to the level of water treatment coming off the site. Okay, Doreen, could you go to the next sheet, because this, yeah, that's not really, okay. So this is the edge of the parking lot right now. This is the building proposed over the parking lot. There's a 40-foot or more strip of what's mostly level grass right now and a wooded edge to the Byram River. The applicant proposes to enhance this grass area with native plantings, some walking paths. In a correspondence I had with Mr. Fain since the staff report was written on the 21st of September, I raised a point asking what kind of clearing would be done along the river, because there are many large trees with understory shrubs and things. And Mr. Fain answered that he did not anticipate having, that there would be removal of any trees along the riverbank, as they're too important to the structural integrity of the bank. So, given that statement, I think what you're looking at is an enhancement of the flat area between the development envelope and the existing wood line along the river. The proposal also would stabilize some badly eroded portions of the bank, specifically around the eastern abutment to the footbridge that crosses the river. The footbridge is going to be removed pending consent from the property owner on the west side of the river. That eroded area under this eastern abutment would be stabilized with core logs and tubulings that would be plugged into the core logs with some other more herbaceous matter in order to, stop the erosion and get that stabilized. I would, Mr. Fain is here tonight, as are the applicant and his team. I'd like to know if there are any other areas of the riverbank that would benefit from such stabilization. There's a phasing plan that was submitted with the, not with the initial submission, but the subsequent submission. I think this is a fairly good blueprint for how to implement this project. A couple of important things about the project is this going to entail a relatively small amount of excavation. So, the whole thing we run into with big buildings, you think, oh my God, you got to de-water the foundation, you have to do this, you have to do that. I don't really foresee much of that, but the applicant has gone to the extent of having a dewatering system called out on their plan ahead of time, not as an afterthought when they have to get rid of the muddy water and they just throw a trash pump in the hole and start pumping. Their phasing plan also includes a truck wash station so that trucks leaving the site would not just go across an anti-tracking pad, but have their wheels washed off. It includes a cement washout pit, again, something we don't ordinarily see on a preliminary plan like this, but something that we often have to chase people to do when they start getting cement deliveries and having the trucks hosed out, willy-nilly running down the hill into our wetlands and our watercourses. There are a couple of details that I think were missed on the plan that I lay out in the report, including some tree protection along the eastern side to protect the line of evergreens that are at the edge of the chain link fence that's at the property line. As those trees will be within the construction envelope, I know the applicant has stated they want to maintain those trees as a screen. Well, they have to be protected in order to make sure they're maintained. Let's see. Another thing that wasn't completely clear to me is a small question maybe Mr. Fain could answer. There's cement blocks here about, 120 feet north of the bridge. And there's one is up in the bank, and I don't think that's an issue. One is right on the riverbank, the edge of the water, even at low flow. And I don't know whether those are creating eddies that are encouraging or producing erosion, but if they are, they might also be removed when the footbridge is removed. Okay, so the bottom line in my assessment of this is that this project, if the erosion controls are maintained during construction and throughout the enhancement of this buffer area until the site is restabilized, has very little impact for, very little chance of having direct impact on the river during construction. And with the drainage that they're putting in, it's actually going to create better quality water in the river coming off this site than at present. I recommend the agency issue a permit with the conditions in the staff report. As is clear, we have a lot of neighbor interest in this. Prior to the printing of the report on September 21st, we'd received 8 comments. Since then, we've received 26 new comments, additional comments. Your packets and your folders this evening have copies of all of those comments. A number of the comments are not really within the jurisdiction of the agency. But Mr. Fain did provide a response to each of the comments in a letter that we received today that was provided to you in your packets, and he can discuss tonight. Oh, actually, no, Mr. Fain has those. He's going to hand them out tonight. So I'll just leave it at that. I know there are probably people who want to have something to say besides the applicant, so that's all I'll say for now.
Okay, thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. John Tessie of Gilbride Tusa Last and Splain, representing the owner applicants. And I appreciate Bob's staff report and his overall description of the project. Here with me this evening are Mr. Fain, it's been mentioned a few times, and also our project engineer, Leonard, as opposed to Tony DeAndrea of RV DeAndrea. And both will answer questions, but Jay will also give a short presentation. First of all, I just want to inform you where we are in the overall land use process to help you all. The only application pending at this time in connection with this project is this application. We are going to be filing with the Planning and Zoning Commission later this week, Thursday or Friday, for a special permit and a site plan approval for the addition of the residential building as described in the staff report. That application will be brought under what's called Section 6110G of the Town of Greenwich Building Zoning Regulations. The application is fully compliant with the Town of Greenwich building zone regulations. In terms of the overall construction proposal, we actually are not, because very often you think there's a maximum development of property, but we are not proposing a development, involves you, but also other land use agencies, and it's for the benefit of people who are here interested in the project. Developing what we always hear FAR. So we're actually developing to about 60% of the 65% of the overall FAR developments for the property. We have, as is the case with all Planning and Zoning Commission applications relating to 6110G, which is our moderate income regulation in Greenwich. By moderate income, it's not deemed affordable and it's not low cost. Its design is to provide on a priority basis housing for middle-income families with, number one. Number two, the priority is to Town of Greenwich employees and employees of special services, the hospital, gyms, etc. It involved the Planning and Zoning Commission's pointed decision, literally over the last 20 years, to make an effort to provide these, what I call incentives to developers to come up with an inclusionary zoning program when it comes to residential housing. So in this particular project, 20%, as required by the zoning regulations, will meet that criteria of moderate income housing performance. And so far, and as part of that application process, too, what we go through, and representatives of your agency were there, your staff was there, a process of pre-application meetings with the staff members of the various departments of the town that would be reviewing our application. And we've done that, whether it was SOAR, engineering, wetlands, zoning. So it's a process that by the time it gets to you, we have a fairly good understanding of what, on a collective basis, the expectations are of town hall. Obviously, not commission members, board members, or agency members yet. We get the privilege of starting with you. That all said, again, it was just background information for you so you understand where we are and what we were about. We appreciate, as I noted earlier, Bob's report and his comments. What I'd like to do first of all, because there's been a specific reference to it, which is Mr. Fain's letter that specifically addresses, I believe it's 5 issues and comments relating to our project that seem to be a central theme of at least the initial letters we saw coming from area citizens who are concerned about the project. So with that, I'll pass out, I can pass out the letter. Oh, thank you. I was hoping for a volunteer. This is the original. The letter is actually the handiwork of both Mr. Fain and Mr. DeAndrea, because some of the questions raised are engineering type questions, and the other ones relate to the area of expertise of Mr. Fain pertaining to the effect of the project on the watercourse, and questions about the existence or non-existence of wetlands. Would you perhaps, since you're all looking down, I'll give you a moment to read the letter. The comment comes from the letters we've received, and then the responses are our responses. Oh, yeah, sure. We did have plenty of it.
Actually, Mr. Tess, you want to have just Jay come up and he can just summarize the responses quickly?
Yes,
for us?
that makes
For the-
sense. You heard enough from me. Jay, why don't you go through that and also address a couple of comments that Bob had that he asked you to address regarding the bank and also the concrete walls, concrete blocks?
I'm going to only address 2 of these comments because they're my bailiwick of responsibility. A number of these revolve around flooding issues, and I'll let Mr. DeAndrea talk to that. He's the expert on that.
You could just, for the record, just...
Yeah, I was just about to say, for the record, Jay Fain and Associates, 134 Round Hill Road, Fairfield, Connecticut. I'm the environmental consultant for the applicant. We've worked closely with staff, and we've been following the process through the whole, all along. Staff was kind enough to share this letter with us. There seemed to be a number of people who had the same comments via some type of form letter, but we did want to adequately and thoroughly address those comments. I'm going to start with comment 2, which is regarding impact on flora, fauna, and water resource in the surrounding neighborhoods. First of all, if you read the wetland function analysis, we did a very, very thorough job of researching not only the site, but the entire biome watershed, the flora, the fauna, and the biome watershed. We took a watershed approach to this project and not an individual site approach to this project. I consider it a very great responsibility to address the biome river and to actually improve the situation over what there is today, and I take that responsibility to heart. The comment was regarding potential for nesting grounds for diamondback, terrapin, turtle, and Caroline pond, and also the potential for osprey nests or disturbing osprey nests. Regarding the nesting grounds for the diamond turtleback turtle, I did not aware of any, nor did I uncover any records of diamond turtleback turtle in Caroline Pond. I would find it unusual for them to be there because that's not their typical habitat. They're in estuarine habitat, and they use sandy, very sandy areas to lay their eggs. But above and beyond that, what the comment is, whatever, if there were terrapins in that area, we would have no impact, because we're not having no impact on Caroline Pond. It's pretty far removed from where we are, so there would not be any impact to that species if they were there. Similarly, there are no osprey nests on our site. If you saw our site, so it's pretty stark. We, again, not going to have any impact on osprey nests, nor will we touch any of their nests as part of this project. And then this third comment was regarding the disruption and potential destruction of the wetlands on the property and adjacent and abutting properties. Waterway is acknowledged and proposed without soil tests of the same, including property on west side of Watercourse. Well, we did do a field delineation of the Byram River here, and it appears on the site plan. We did the east side of the river because that's the side that the applicant owns. We did not do the west side as we don't have access to that. It's multiple private properties. But it's very well defined. There's no wetlands there. It's very well defined. The bank on the far side of that river, if you've been out there, is very steep. And the high water mark there is the edge of the wetland resource in that area. I'm just going to turn this over to Mr. DeAndrew so we can finish addressing the rest of the comments, and I'll come back and talk a little bit more about the study I did of the watershed.
Mr. Fain, I'm sorry, while you're talking about the hydraulics of the site, how far up does the tide come in the Byram River?
It comes up, I think this is just about the edge of where the tide comes in officially. Obviously, it varies in different tidal prisms, but this is the edge of about Route 1, a little bit further. This site is considered a CAM site. It's in a CAM review zone. And Mr. DeAndrew may be able to speak to that a little more because he's doing a study of that also, but it does come up to just about.
Thank you.
Wait a minute, Jay. Just for the record, when you looked at the east side of the river, did you take any soil samples?
We sampled extensively. I wanted to understand the type of soils that were in this particular area and along the site. The first part of the site, it's on the other sheet. There's a retaining wall that pretty much defines the edge of the river there. Pretty much can't walk along the edge of the river because it's a retaining wall, so there are no soils other than urban soils on the front part of the site. As you get to the rear part of the site, it's, if you read my report and you realize what the site history is, any native soils have been long, and I'm talking 50 years or more, been removed from the site in the area, and the floodplain has been filled with fill material. So I did sample throughout the entire area, did look at the sites. I did not find any native soils, did not find any wetland soils at all on that entire site itself. And in addition to that, we did do borings throughout the site so we understand what the understory structure is like. We have a good understanding what the soil there and how much fill is there.
Okay, and when you introduced yourself, and just for the benefit of the people who are here, you said you're the environmental consultant for the applicant. What are your professional qualifications?
I have a bachelor's degree from Cornell University and a master's degree from Cornell University in wildlife science and forest ecology. I have approximately 35 years of experience as a wetland scientist, probably done over 1,000 projects. Also certified soil scientist, probably done over 2,000 wetland delineations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Leonard DeAndrea, and I'll talk a little bit about comments 1 and 4 and 5. And for this first narrative, I'm going to flip this over. And what this is a reprint from the flood insurance study, and it shows the reach of river of where we intend to put this building. And what we're pointing out here is you've got a 100-year flood elevation here, and the requirements of the town of Greenwich is to make sure that we elevate the building above that base flood. In this case, we'll have to the underside of the building itself more than a foot above the base flood elevation, closer to 2 feet, and the actual first floor elevation will be about 5 feet above that. So it's clearly above that, and then the supports are going to be with columns, so we don't have large obstructions there. The other thing, too, is we've grabbed the flood insurance study itself and the backwater analysis, and we've looked at how this river was modeled. And one of the things that engineering would like us to do is actually rerun that model by placing this building into it. We've already looked at that input data, and from the results we're seeing from their study, we don't assume any sort of a rise at all, because they've assumed what we call ineffective flow within 25 feet of the center line of the river at this reach. But that study will be done, and that will be submitted through the engineering department.
So, Mr. DeAndrea, when do you expect all of those studies to be completed and available?
We've already done the river sections themselves, and what we have to do with this model is you get the printout, and it's multiple sheets, and it's an old study. You have to actually take the data and input it manually into the new computer models, run it, and then what you do is you take site-specific cross-sections and you rerun that again, and that gives you the base existing conditions model. Then you do it a third time, and that's when you drop in your building and you compare those results.
Will those results be available before, as you go through planning and zoning, for instance?
Right. That will take us probably another week and a half, and then they'll be distributed. The other comment would be about the water quality, and on this exhibit here, these shaded areas themselves here, there's 2 of them here and here, they're linked together, and that's our areas of porous pavement. And then in this drainage management plan, what we'll be doing is taking all of the roof runoff itself and distributing that as well through the 2 porous pavement sections, which is comprised of a section of crushed stone. Underneath the crushed stone, that was noted too, is very sandy gravel material below the fill material. And a lot of that fill material itself is going to be removed so that we can bring in the proper sections required by the drainage manual. The other part of this is there's a swath of pavement here that the building doesn't cover, and that will be draining through. And that will tend to also wash out some of the pollutants here. All this will be then sheet flowed into the porous pavement here, all connected before it finally gets discharged out. Under the smaller storms, another good benefit of this is it takes that first flush, that first inch of rainfall, it brings it into these storage areas, and then it ends up feeding this as a base flow to the river in times of low flow. So that's a positive. And again, we've actually provided more than what's required on the water quality, in addition to providing the green roof. So when we did this drainage management plan, we didn't need the green roof, so we initially didn't take credit for it. By adding that into it, it's just another complement to the system. The other thing, there was some comments about if this building had to be evacuated, could it affect these neighboring areas? So modeling something that we do often in Stanford, we're developing a flood preparedness plan that would be given to all the residents and instructions on how to prepare for a flood. And then if there was a need to evacuate the building, what route would they take? Where would they take their vehicles? And there are designated areas in Greenwich. I believe it's the Western Civic Center as one of the shelters that would be designated. But basically, it's a plan that you would read and tells you what to do, who to contact, what to watch, what TV stations, what radio stations. And that would be monitored, and if there was such a flood impending, then they would be directed to remove their cars, which, if you know this parking lot right now, this is kind of like a commercial building, but it's also having some shared or stored cars in there. That's a little bit more difficult than letting everybody know that something is impending and it's time to move these vehicles out of the way. I think that's the summary of the three comments we were responding to, unless you have some other direct questions.
So all of the runoff from the driveway ultimately flows through the pervious pavement regimen?
We've actually been asked to do more. So we've given the volume that we need, but Scott Marucci has made a comment that, you know, if we are disturbing, can you go back one slide to the front section, northeast section? Right. So there's an area in here that all drains out to this culvert in this location. There is a section of the driveway here now that we have not picked up, but we have the volume for it. So one of engineering's comments now is to say, you know, get more of the disturbed areas. And by disturbance, this is just going to be repaved. So
Right.
what we're going to do is redirect the runoff now that might go in this direction and bring this whole driveway here back into the permeable pavement.
Okay. And with that, you're also addressing any heat loads in the runoff? Because
A couple things in here, too. You have the green roof, which is great because you've got sections of that. And then the roof runoff plus a lot of this driveway now get directed and piped to the underground before it overflows. And it's an overflow setup, so it has to fill and then overflow.
Mr. D'Andrea, how many apartments are being put in? I didn't see that in the material.
120.
And has a study been done on the impact on the sewage system?
Okay. Yes, we've had meetings with Richard Feminello before we asked them some questions initially, and that led to a meeting. And we thought initially that we may have to put in our own pump station and bypass the existing pump station going down Pemberwick. After they thought about it, after we all got together, it was decided that it would be more beneficial to take this building by gravity to the existing pump station, and if there were some improvements being made, they would negotiate with the applicant as to what those improvements could be.
Okay.
At this point, there aren't any on the table.
Was there any impact on this site during Sandy?
I would say, given what I know, I'm going to just think about what I know about the Sandy itself. The stillwater elevation for Sandy reached elevation 10. This river at this location is tidally influenced. Having said that, I would say that it probably creeped over the banks. Not with wave action, but with its still water of about 10, and the center of the parking lot is about elevation 10.
Thank you.
I just wanted to address Bob's comment regarding the disturbance of the banks of the river and the trees and also the concrete structures. There are a number of invasive species along the banks of the river. A lot of it's Japanese knotweed, which is a real invasive herbaceous type plant. There's some barberry and some other bittersweet and things like that that can be fairly easily removed without disturbing the river banks itself. There are a number of trees that are, I guess, would be considered invasive, black locust and Norway maple. In my opinion, again, we're taking the do no harm approach. It would do more harm to try to remove those trees and open up the bank to erosion than to just leave them. They're not terribly prolific. we can keep an eye on them, make sure that additional trees don't seed in, or so. I definitely don't want to touch those. I definitely want to keep them, minimize the disturbance of the banks of this river, because once you disturb it, it's going to be hard to stabilize it. So we are going to be removing the pedestrian bridge. We did meet with a consultant in terms of how to remove that. He has a special machine that kind of goes out over the river and with a basket and will catch the pieces of concrete. So none of the concrete will drop into the river. We're going to remove it all the way to the other side. On our side on the far side, we have to leave the footings and the embankment because there's no way to get them out there. We can't. There's just no way to get a machine over. On our side, we're not going to move the footings underground. We're just going to cut them about a foot or two below ground and then cover them up. Because what's that? Below ground. Yeah, we're going to bury them below ground. Because we don't, again, we're trying to minimize any disturbance to the river. I'll take a look at those two concrete structures that Bob referred to, but there are a couple of similar concrete structures on the other side of the river. My feeling is that, again, if we start monkeying around with that, we're going to end up doing more harm than good. And again, I'm taking a very conservative approach here. If you read my report, I took a very conservative approach and a whole watershed approach. And the whole idea here is to improve the existing condition, to have no impact on the river. I think we've demonstrated that. I could go through the whole report, but it would take me 3 or 4 hours to do that. And I don't think you wanted me to do that tonight, but I will say a couple of things that you should take a look at because I'm kind of proud of them. The phasing plan, we went into extreme detail and really took a look at that. I don't think it leaves anything to anybody's imagination. It goes through 6 different phases. It has, as Bob said, the dewatering, and we're using the dewatering tanks. We're not going to dewater into the river. We're going to make sure we don't violate any general permits in terms of discharge of any turbid water. We don't anticipate that we have to, but we want to be prepared in case we do. We have the anti-tracking pad. We're going to have a stabilized surface here already. It's asphalt. We're going to judiciously remove the asphalt so that we don't have the entire site exposed. We'll use the asphalt that's there to stage on to the last possible moment, then remove it. So those are the type of things that we were thinking about in the entire project. The other thing I thought that was very important was to wrap the site with a chain link page type fence so that any machinery is basically trapped within the site itself. Can't move outside. That's our perimeter. Our silt fences go up against the chain link fence. So we have a captive situation, captive audience, so to speak. And again, it's a very tight site. We tried to think about every aspect of it, and that was another thing that we brought forward. I did want to just mention, and I brought to your attention a number of studies on the Byram River. If you have a chance to read them, they're nice, they're good studies. When I went to the most was the Byram watershed study. I did look at what the recommendations are there. They do recommend a 12% decrease in impervious area higher up in the watershed where they thought it was possible. We were able to actually exceed that to at least 15%. I think it's actually much higher than that. Our total suspended soil removal rate is about 90%. So we're meeting the goals that are brought forth in that study, and we are going to have a net improvement here on water quality, and that does include, although it's harder to model, coliform bacteria, which is a cause of impairment elsewhere in this watershed. Happy to answer any questions, and again, I guess there's a lot of people here, so I don't want to take up too much of your time. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, I got one more quick question, Mr. Fain. If you remove invasive plants, knotweed or whatever, from the understory of the forest along the river, do you anticipate opening up the river to light penetration through that understory? That's my question.
To some degree, we have anticipated that we're going to replace some of what we remove with some more herbaceous and shrub material. I do want to encourage some more light penetration because with the closed overstory, we aren't getting as much vegetation down low, so we are getting some erosion occurring in a couple of spots, and I think encouraging some lower vegetation is going to help in that regards also.
Okay, well, I think the concern that I stated in the report was not knowing what you were going to be removing when you said it had a general note, invasives removal along the bank. That, you know, the shade in the river may suppress herbaceous growth right at the ground level over the bank, but it's a very nice shady part of the river, and I'd hate for that to be lost and the river to be
Again, we're
exposed
not
to
moving
more
any of the
solar.
overstory trees. I think with that canopy will remain intact. We're just removing, if you look at the way the sunlight comes down, it comes right down, and because there's no, on the eastern side, there's no vegetation, light penetrates right to the base of those trees, and that's what's encouraging that invasive vegetation. That's why it's there. So, and there's no maintenance in that location, so we need to get that out of there. And then I think, again, replacing it with something that will, as a placeholder, be superior than just leaving it blank.
Okay, well, you're on the record saying if you open it up, you're willing to replace it with something that's better.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're not, again, this is a stewardship thing. We're not trying to accomplish anything here besides a positive thing, and we're going to work closely with staff. I'm sure we'll be walking the site and looking at it together, but I do have quite a bit of restoration and enhancement experience, so I think this can be done successfully. This isn't quite a restoration. I just wanted to point that out because we're not taking away all the material. There's probably 4 to 6 feet of fill along the edge of the river. It used to be a floodplain type forest. We can't restore that floodplain type forest, so we're going to enhance and rehabilitate to the maximum extent that we can. And also, one of the things that I think is very important is we're going to reconnect. We're going to reconnect the people to the river. Right now, it's kind of like just a non-place. It's not a place that feels pleasant to be, and I think we want to make that part of this project, that the people there can reconnect to the river, because that's how stewardship evolves. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have nothing to say, more to say in terms of our presentation, just whether there were any other questions of me, Mr. DeAndrea.
Any further agency questions?
Is there a green roof contractor involved? Do we know the green roof design, or is that just proposed at this point?
The green roof.
Oh, the green roof.
Is there a square footage that is been set?
It's about, what is it, about 8,000 square feet? 6,000?
6,000 square feet of green roof?
Right.
Okay.
You know, it was in that ballpark.
It's sizable.
And our architects, Granoff Associates, have been working diligently on that.
John, excuse me, could you expand a little bit on the sewer discussion?
Sure.
As you're well aware, we've had some concerns about other large projects.
Yes.
West
That-
Putnam.
Right.
Is the sewer capacity an issue at all in that area, or not?
Mr. Feminella has been involved from the beginning. I said in the beginning when we first had our meetings involving the pre-application process, and he's been working with both Mr. Schwartz, who's here this evening, Eric Schwartz, who's the representative of the developer, and also with Mr. DeAndrea. And as Mr. DeAndrea pointed out, right now it's not about capacity at all. He's given no indication to us that there's any capacity issue. His primary question was how to get there, so to speak, from our site, and we agreed that we agreed. Mr. Schwartz and his team agreed that with respect to the pump station that's adjacent to the property to the rear, Mr. Feminella would secure the cost of upgrading it because it was on the agenda to be upgraded anyway, and we've come along. So it's really about upgrading that pump station. No indication of any capacity issues, no concern expressed about any type of breakouts, which I know is part of the issue along Horseneck Brook. We don't appear to have any of those here at all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further agency questions? Okay. I'm going to open this up to public comment. Just a little preamble. We are the Wetlands Agency. We are not planning and zoning. I know that several of the issues that are of concern to the neighborhood tend to reside within planning and zoning's purview. So I would just ask that you limit your comments to wetlands and wetlands impacts and what you've heard tonight. Okay? So who would like to speak?
Hello, my name is Peter Alexander, and I'm a landscape architect. And in that form letter, I apologize I didn't fill in that I've been here for 68 years. So, but I do back some of the ideas in that letter. I know that you act as a state agency appointed by the town. I want to make sure that you understand that this is both title and I did hear watershed actually mentioned a couple of times, which is somewhat reassuring and gives me some hope for the future. But you should understand that to round off the numbers, not to get too geeky on you, it's approximately a 25 square mile watershed that flows through this channel, which is 70% occluded. So the 7-foot tide effect for flood relief is very, very small now. It could be changed, but as this application goes forward, I think you need to understand a couple of things. The states, plural, have purview over most of these applications because it's title. I also want to have you understand that the HEC-RAS data shows very, very different models for the effect of the 100-year floods. And since this watershed is shared by New York State and Connecticut, and it is labeled as a potential reservoir system, as we know, the northern part is a reservoir, the regulations now require a 50% increase in the modeling for the 100-year storm. So I think that the situation really needs to be looked at much more carefully from the flood situation. The narrowness and the debilitated nature of the area that we're talking about from an ecological standpoint is somewhat important, but I think the physiographic conditions where you have a very steep west side and major buildings on the east side, and even though we have this one up on stilts, I was participating in the FEMA Research Institute while it started to rain a couple of weeks ago in Houston, and I want to make sure we all understand here in town that floating debris, including trees, is a major player in storms like that. The Sandy effect that we saw was absolutely minimal in here. The only major part, the 10-foot, didn't go much farther past 100, 150 feet north of where this property line is. But then it went way down to 2 or 3 feet. It was basically nothing. It was, again, the lack, thank goodness, of a real storm surge and so forth. But the process that I think you should carefully look at when considering this application is the potential fairly dramatic effect on the upstream results. I know that since the 73, 74, getting wetlands going, which I supported and even lobbied for, it was about downstream flooding. But I think you need to closely look at the DEC in New York State regulations before you take this too seriously. It's possible to attenuate it, but it really needs to be looked at pretty carefully. As far as the septic and the sewer systems, I think we have an architect here that knows a bit about that, and he might discuss that, because, as you know, the direct abutter is one of the pump stations, and the effect on the neighborhood from an emergency point of view is a factor. The effect on the loss of property values because of this is a factor, and oddly, again, this is brand new, the Category 5 documentation for FEMA is opposed to green roofs now, because once it starts raining a lot, the pounds per square foot get held up there, and when you have the tornadic effect of the eye passing by, it can be a problem. So this, even if all the cars were out of there, the potential for the building to affect the results of the flooding should be carefully looked at. Thank you.
Can I just ask, are you here?
No, I'm here as a neighbor. I'm not getting paid. Yeah. I'm just speaking out.
Okay.
I don't know whether any of you have any financial interest in this project or not, or any of the staff does, but I don't, either way. Thank you.
We would recuse ourselves if we did.
Would you? Oh, good.
Someone else like to make a public comment regarding wetlands issues?
I'm Steve Hall, and I live at 12 Deep Gorge Road in Glenville. And although I'm not immediately adjacent to the site, I have great concerns about the quality of water, about the Byram River, and the discharge to the Long Island Sound, where we have, I think you probably know, quite a dead zone. Mm-hmm. I was just curious if somebody could point with a pointer to where the pump station is. I studied, I must correct Peter, I studied architecture. I am not a licensed architect, but I've been practicing project management of many projects such as this for 40-some years.
If I'm correct, it's over here. Is it there? Right there?
And if one of the gentlemen here could tell me again, I wasn't real clear, and Peter seems to have a different opinion about what the flood level would be above grade in a 100-year flood. Could you?
I'm sorry, you just
Okay.
finished making
All
a
right.
comment.
My concern is if we have a 100-year flood and or more, as Peter might suggest, and the pump station gets flooded, what happens? And do we end up with sewage into the stream? I'm also generally aware, I just got back from vacation for 2 weeks, so I really haven't had a chance to look at the plants. But I was concerned about the downstream. I think there's been a lot of discussion about the bridge that takes us into Portchester there. And I think there are lots of, I'm just wondering if that's considered. I think that's been a problem in terms of the flow of the river and the tidal actions.
My understanding is that the downstream bridge is not in the scope of this project.
It may not be in the scope of this project, but, you know, we're all interrelated
Right.
in how we use our areas. And if you say, well, I'm not worried about that, you know, that's a problem later for the river or for the residents, then it is a problem. It's a practical problem. That's about it. One thing on the porous pavement, I'm not sure, and I'm not technically cognizant, maybe Mr. Fain can answer that. we're still not going to be reducing the contaminants. The contaminants from automobiles or whatever is still going to percolate through that porous pavement. It may be better because it's not washing immediately into the river, but it still goes in. Perhaps they settle out in the basins that they're going to provide, but I'd like some comment on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment, please?
Hi, good evening. My name's Andrea Bloom. I am a resident of Upland Street East. I am also the chairman of the Pembroke-Glenville Association. Thank you for letting us speak this evening. And thank you, Mr. Clausy, for providing the information that we sent to the department, to the developer, so they were able to answer many of the questions that we had. Although I know that a lot of neighbors have come out tonight, and I just wanted to acknowledge that they're here because many of them have lived in this community for years and are very familiar with the flooding and the issues that we've had in the area. Many of them have followed the Army Corps of Engineers study, which has been going on for the last couple years, and so people are definitely concerned. We've received many emails, calls, Facebook posts from residents in the Pembroke-Glenville area. Some of them are here tonight, so I'd just like to acknowledge that they're here. Could you please just raise your hands? I know you've all been waiting a long time. Thank you for coming out tonight. Specifically, we know the concerns of the area, especially with what's been going on with the recent flooding in Houston, these storms like we've never seen before. We have all been evacuated from our homes when we've had floods, warnings during the hurricanes. I actually live in an area that has some flood mitigation, and the water came right to the top of the river during that time. So, and I do know the building 777 quite well, and I know that it has flooded as well, and people have lost their cars. So it definitely does flood, and the water definitely does come up there. Mr. Fain, you'll be happy to know that they're doing a turtle study in the river from the Maritime Museum is going to be doing a study of the turtles. There hasn't been one done since 2009, so they're really interested. They were here last weekend at Todd's Point for the Bio Blitz, so they're very interested in exploring our river and exploring the osprey as well. So I just wanted to give you that information, and thank you everyone in the neighborhood who's come out and talked to us a little bit about some of the flooding and some of the other issues, and we just hope that you take that in consideration moving forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other members of the community like to speak?
Hi, my name is Lisa Stewart. I live at 2 Homestead Lane, which is in front of the Office Park building. And I definitely saw the flood when Andrew came through. It came right through the parking lot. The garbage pails went this way, cars went that way. Oh, sorry. It is a very big flood area when we have heavy rain. And I'm concerned about if they're doing all this work, we're going to get dust and dirt and water and everything else in our parking lot because they're back to back. Only trees separate it. So everybody was evacuated on Homestead Lane. We were asked to go too, but we're actually a little higher up. The Greenwich Gate is a 4-story building. But that's definitely a big flood area, I can assure you, when the river overflows.
Thank you. Okay. Any other public comment? You good? We had a question just about the contaminants within the porous pavement. They settle out. We just wanted to address. Just the nature.
Actually, really complicated, again, for the record, Jay Fain Associates. It's really a complicated question because there's different methods of removal. There's physical, there's biological, there's chemical, and there's different natures of different pollutants depending on the nature of the pollutant, there's metals, there's hydrocarbons, there's nutrients, and there's bacteria. Some nutrients like nitrogen are actually removed. You have denitrification. Some are immobilized, depending on the process. Infiltration happens to be the most efficient way of removing pollutants. Infiltration into the soil, that you get adsorption onto different particles. Again, it's a complicated process, and a lot of people have done their PhD on it. But that's just in a synopsis. Those are the mechanisms. And again, we will have about 90% removal of total suspended solids. Dissolved solids act a little bit differently, but it goes along because they get absorbed onto particles also. So, and is there any other questions that you wanted me to answer?
Well, let me ask, how many cars are in the parking lot on average today, including the dealers?
That's not me for sure.
And the second part of that question is, how many cars are going to be in the parking lot if this is built, excluding the dealers?
If you exclude the dealers, not many. Today, not many cars at all are in the parking lot.
The point.
If you take away, I'm talking about taking away the deal. If you discounted the dealership, but what's really the underlying point, right?
The underlying point is, how many cars are there today that generate pollutants? How many cars will be there in the future that generate pollutants, assuming that in the future, when you have residents parking, you won't have the dealer cars?
Right. Well,
it can be made a fact. Yes.
Okay. The number of above-grade parking spaces, really, when we take into account, right? I know, it is. Other than the car dealership, but I'm just saying, how many? Yeah, well, I'm not sure. Today, the parking lot's virtually always full. And it's mostly full with car dealership cars. Correct. You're absolutely right. Okay, everybody gets the point. The parking lot, the owner of the property does lease out to car dealers that parking lot to the north of the parking lot, which is north of the building. There's also parking underneath the building. So when it comes to how many cars there today versus how many cars in the future, there isn't that big a difference. Stating the obvious.
Okay, so the point.
However, the big difference is that we're now adding a system that's going to, in terms of stormwater cleanliness, vastly improve existing conditions.
Will car dealerships still park their cars in the new structure if it's approved?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so it'll be just resident parking only?
It'll be resident parking. It's meant to be a shared parking situation. That's one of the beauties of this type of situation. When you have residences in general office building, which what we have, you essentially don't need as much parking because of the fact that the residents are, for the most part, in their units during the evening and the weekends, and the office workers are not. So what happens is we are not maximizing parking. We spent a lot of time on this with the Planning and Zoning Commission staff, and they love the idea of a shared parking plan so that we cannot seek. So we have not solved. We've done something quite interesting, and I think it's important for you to realize this. The underlying zoning regulations provide in what's called a GBO zone, General Business Office Zone, for a maximum coverage of 60% pervious. Impervious. And the Zoning Commission, in connection with this type of application, can waive that number, allow it to increase. We actually are going to be staying right about at that 60%. So in actuality, we are going to be maintaining 40% of this space, of this property, over and above the impervious, not talking about impervious pavement, I'm talking about green space. So 40% of this property will remain, quote, green, not counting the roof and not counting the pervious pavement. So substantial benefit when it comes to existing conditions versus proposed conditions.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that the cars aren't the only source of pollutant to the river or to the environment. There's wet fall, there's dry fall. Speaking into the microphone. Go ahead here. Anyways, there's wet fall, there's dry fall. The cars are probably mostly responsible for hydrocarbons and for metals. You also get quite a bit of pollutants from sanding operations, which will be minimized because of the porous pavement here. You won't need, you can't sand with the porous pavement, so that'll be minimized. And also, the cars definitely don't contribute to coliform, which is one of the items of concern here. Okay. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
I have a question related to the
Yeah, I'm sorry.
as well. If you could just tell me at this time, the 777 building, my understanding is it's really not full, so you don't even have full capacity in the parking lot for how many people could actually be using the parking in that building. That's one part of it. And then the other part is, how can you determine whether people are going to use cars or not use cars, or when they're supposed to be in their houses, or when they're not allowed to be in their houses? I don't think you can really determine that or tell people when they can and cannot come and go.
Okay, well, I can answer that very quickly. First of all, obviously, and you're absolutely right, the building is not 100% rented. If it turned out that...
There's too many constraints here, and too many different issues that, of course, you don't have to, rule on. But I do appreciate their hard work, and see you at Planning and Zoning.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I don't see any hands in the air. Would someone like to make a motion on this application?
I will make a motion to approve the application as proposed with the conditions recommended by staff.
Yep. I'll second that. I guess was just the mention that the conversation that Bob had with Mr. Fain about replacing the removed plant with the restoration plan, and with looking at the shading on the river. So I will second that. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for coming out and giving us your comments, and on to planning and zoning for everyone in the room. Okay, we take a 3-minute bio break, and then we'll get going.
I gotta leave.
Okay, you want to check out? Okay.
I'll stay till.
We got 3 more.
Yeah, I'll stay close. I'll leave for the.
Okay, here we go. All right, okay. All right, thank you, everyone, for being patient. Sometimes applications take a little longer than,
All right, cut the check.
Sorry.
Cut the check.
Pick up the pace.
Okay, chop. Application 2017-125, 59 Dingletown Road, Joseph E. Rizzoli, P.E. for NLK Group LLC for construction of residential and pool house additions and reconstruction of pool and patios 44 feet from wetlands. Mr. Clausy, please.
Okay, very summarily here, I don't have an issue with what the applicant proposes to do, but the DPW has asked for extensive revisions and additional information regarding the drainage system, which is required by this project. I therefore recommend the agency delay. You know, Mr. McTighe is here. He could describe what they want to do, or if the agency has questions, but it's there are no conditions of approval that I would put forward tonight.
Okay.
Good evening,
Thank
Jim
you, Bob.
McTighe from Rizzoli Engineering. We looked at Scott Marucci's comments, and basically it would mean a small addition to the rain garden of an increase of about 175 square feet to the rain garden, and we feel we could easily address that. If you're comfortable, I don't feel like there's any need to delay. We have a meeting scheduled with Scott this Wednesday to go over that.
Yeah, but my understanding from him was that the area in question was this area, which, isn't that in a different watershed from the rain garden?
About half of that area sheet flows currently to the east, which we're allowed to continue to sheet flow to because there's no increase in that direction. It's more about, Scott looks at these things as the overall area that you're disturbing and not so much the increase. So we ran the numbers on the shy side where while we incorporated all of the new impervious coverage, because we're redoing the motor court, Scott wants us to capture that for water quality, and that's where his comments come from, which we feel we could easily address by a 25-30% increase in the rain garden in the area that we have proposed.
Okay.
We also would like to utilize regarding the construction access. In talking with the contractor, because we're doing an addition onto the house here and the pool house addition, rather than going around the house clockwise, we feel we can come around counterclockwise, come through the area, go out, construct the septic, come back and work our way back, and it'll be much less site disturbance.
All right.
All right, I'm looking at the drainage summary report, and it looks to me like there is a little corner of the pool that sheds this way, but the whole thing goes this way, and you have to do 60% lid. I mean, there's a wetland right here. It's just something that I think the agency may need to see before they
The pool terrace currently sheds off in both directions, east and west, basically right down the middle. Currently, there's an existing trench drain in front of the pool house. We're still going to propose that, and we'll probably propose a French drain around the patio to collect the runoff and capture it and renovate it.
Okay. Well, we don't have terms.
Yes, you do. No conditions.
No, outside we don't have commission.
Yeah, no condition.
I'm looking at
Okay.
comment 2C in Mr. Marucci's comments. He says watershed E3, pool house addition, reconstructed pool and patio, 2,561 square feet, requires 60% be directed to a lid BMP, which would be in watershed E3, which is, according to your watershed map, the drainage divide is right there, so it's all up here. Where are you going to put it, and what is it?
We can offset the increase by picking up additional area elsewhere, as often we do with Scott. We can pick up some additional rainwater from the motor court area and the front driveway area and renovate that in lieu of that small area that drains to the east. The pool will be picked up.
Okay, then there are conditions of approval. What I would say is if a final construction plan comes in and there's any drainage structure or surface feature, something up here, you may need to make a new application.
No, we will not be posing any drainage structures on that side of the pool. That area is undisturbed, and we'd like to maintain it that way.
So
Well-
the expansion of the rain garden is,
It's the best location for the management of the stormwater on the site. We tested this area down here, and we have the room down here. And right now, presently, there's an undisturbed area over here, and we would like to leave it that way. In fact, we're going to be pulling the pool patio back and defining it. It's a contemporary house, so it's a free-form pool. So, and the pool has probably been there in 20, 30 years. So they want a rectangular pool with an automatic cover because they have small kids, and we'll be able to manage that here. And we'll leave this site undisturbed, and if anything, we'll be pulling it back. The only wetlands over here are the area that's been defined here. There is a low spot off to the property here. We had our soil scientists give an opinion on it, and there were no wetland soils in that area. It's just a low spot.
Well, I would suggest that if you're willing to take the risk, that in order to satisfy engineering, you make any change that in any way affects the wetlands, you come back.
Yes, that's not a problem. We can agree to that.
Is that okay with you, Bob?
Right, I think that there would have to be some statement in the conditions that says final construction plan showing,
Any new regulated activities.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. There's presently no regulated activities for storm drainage out by the pool. So if something comes to pass that it needs to be out there, this permit is null and void. It's
There
not
is an
what this is.
existing drain line coming off the pool house currently going in that direction. We won't increase that. We won't add anything more to it. And anything new we will manage, and we'll bring it to this direction over to the rain guard.
So it's your risk to take.
That's fine. We're willing to take that.
Then
that's fine.
you want
You
to
don't
check?
need that condition. That extra condition. 'Cause you're right, it's not a regulated activity. If it's not regulated, it's just.
You want to check for public, and let's get on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any public comment on this application? No? Okay. Would you like to take a shot?
I move to approve. With the understanding that if there's any change in the drainage such that it becomes a regulated activity, you come back.
Thank you.
And Bill seconds. All in favor?
Thank you.
Okay, next 2017-127, 30 Houston Lane and 17 Pheasant Lane, SE Minor, Inc. for 30 Pheasant Lane LLC, and John C. Hart and Susan W. Hart for partial pond dredging. Ms. Sesto, please.
Okay. So this pond, like the one we heard from earlier, is shared among several different property owners. The difference, this one is only a portion of the pond is going to be dredged between the two properties, 30 Houston, which I believe members have seen in prior applications, and then across the pond, 17 Pheasant Lane. 17 Pheasant Lane also includes a tributary to the pond with an expanded sediment forebay that will be addressed. This project is meant to be dredged through diver-assisted suction dredging, which I'm really interested to hear about. I gotta say, I got some funny images in my head.
Think Bering Sea gold.
The area to be dredged is approximately 2.2 acres in size, and the plan is delineated in different work zones. I believe it's 2 basic work zones. The sediment depth ranges from 1 to 7 feet, with an average of 3.2. This is in the sediment bay, and then the second work area is also about 0.2 acres in size, and sediment depths range from 4 to 8 feet with an average of 5.7. When you get out into the pond, there are areas of cattails and other emergent growth. which is shrinking the size of the pond over time, as ponds will do that. Comments that I have. Now, where are my comments? What did I do with them? I think I have an old report here. Anyway, so my comments are, which I hope you all have. Thank you, yeah. Maybe I didn't get all my pages printed out. With just a portion of the pond being dredged, additional narrative is needed to explain how the deeper portions will marry up with the undredged portions. That's, again, one of the visuals that I'm having a hard time with. The emergent shelf at 30 Houston is narrow, being proposed at just 18 inches. So the applicant should explain the rationale for such a narrow configuration. 17 Pheasant has a large expanse of highly managed lawn, fully draining down to the watercourse and pond. And the applicant, as part of a more holistic approach to managing this pond, the applicant should consider how this aspect of their landscape detracts from their goals for maintaining a clear and healthy pond. I mean, the lawn is really impeccable. And the proposed stream edge plantings are too narrow to effectively offset the likely pollution generated from the yard. And very important to note that the pond side plantings that were approved with the last application that came through here, 216-150, that those requirements would remain in effect.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nora.
Larry?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Larry Liebman, and with me tonight is Tracy Chalifax. Also with me is the people from Pristine Waters, the people who do the diving, so to speak. And Dr. Danzer is here, as well as some of the applicants are here, another project and another project manager. This pond is not new to pond dredging. You approved it in 1975. You approved it again in 1994. Ecologically, it's a wonderful thing to have citizens that are going to revert the process. The forebay area that is completely plugged is primarily from roadside sediments that are coming down. The afterwards is the organic sediments. The sands settle out quick, and then the organics travel and settle out in the areas. Obviously, since the last time it was dredged was 1994, it is in need of being maintained. And we are great, I think that I am grateful that there's somebody that's actually going to, put together the time and energy to do that. With regard to 17 Pheasant, they currently are using an IPM for turf management. Their landscaper is only putting down what is necessary to keep the lawn what it is, as well as to keep with the areas to keep the to keep the pond healthy and clean. The pond depth after the areas of work is approximately 8 feet deep. Okay, and the only other thing that I have to say is that there's requests for deed declarations every single time. There's 5 applications on 17 Pheasant and 6 applications on 30 Eusted. I don't know how many times you want to keep putting the deed declaration on. There are definitely triggers to let everybody know that there's wetlands on the property. I'm now going to turn this over to Tracy, who's going to talk about the plantings, etc.
Tracy Shalafo, landscape architect. I might actually turn this conversation first toward the pond dredging operation, because I know you're curious about that. It's a very delicate manner of dredging. It's diver-assisted suction dredging, and what happens first is pads are set up to accommodate large geotextile tubes. Let me just go around to the plan here. So the staging areas for 2 geotextile tubes are here and here. And they're surrounded by erosion controls and hay bales. There's an excellent detail here showing what it looks like as the sediment and water is pumped into the bag, and then it's left to dewater completely. And after it's dried, the bag is cut open and the dry spoils are exported from the site. Mark Amler of Pristine Waters can go into more detail about the dredging operation, but I'd like to point out that it's very safe for any animals that are living in the water. No one gets hurt or killed in this process. And it's also very good for the pond in that they can feel where the bottom is, especially in the sediment forebay, which does have a cobblestone liner. As they're sort of wading along with that piece of equipment, they can make sure they're not taking too much out and disturbing that liner. And I'd like to reiterate what Larry touched upon. This needs to be done. This forebay is so full right now that maybe some road sand is settling out, but all of the organics are just going right over and causing so much depth of muck in the main part of the pond. Now I'd like to speak about the plantings. Yes. Oh.
The well and marrying the two? Or?
Yes, thank you. Mark Amler can speak about that. Comment number one.
So if you were to go into the pond, which I don't necessarily recommend, but I have been in the pond, what you would find is in the sediment forebay, it's mostly sand, right? And as has been mentioned, what happens is as the water is running through, it's depositing a little bit of sand, but there's not a lot of capacity left. It's all the way up, and the organics are flushing in. So what's been happening for at least a period of time is the organics that have been flushing through this corridor that follows after the spillway has been actually accumulating kind of near the mouth or of the greater pond body, right? So what we're proposing to do is actually to restore the depth leading up to that point. And in fact, what it will do is will decrease sedimentation in the balance of the pond as a result of providing for more volume, rather than there is no other impact. That's essentially what you'll create more volume, and it will begin to fill in there slowly over time rather than migrating out to the greater pond body. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you. As part of this application, we're proposing restoration plantings on the property of 17 Pheasant. We're providing a almost continuous buffer planting along the sediment forebay's edge of iris, about 285 iris, and also 2 understory trees, Amelanchier canadensis, here and here. There would be 2 small breaks in that planted border just so that the homeowners can access the water's edge, approximately here and here. And also pertaining to 17 Pheasant, we have actually prepared a plan showing additional plantings to help answer comment number 3 under questions and comments, to provide additional buffer to help offset any effects that the lawn may have, which again, they're only using what they need to maintain this lawn. So this shows a revised planting plan for an approximately 15-foot wide buffer on this existing peninsula. And beyond the number of iris that you see on the submission plan, we're increasing the quantity by 75 iris. Also, the existing iris in this area are becoming very, very dense, and they're actually in need of transplanting. And from these iris, approximately anywhere between 25 to 100 iris could be transplanted to this area and added to this area. I'd like to point out, however, there's a very mature existing stand of white pines here, and we want to be very mindful to not disturb the root zone. So this planting is going to have to take place very carefully, but it is our intention to increase that buffer to approximately 15 feet from here to here. Moving on to the 30 Hewstead property, question number 2, comment. The emergent shelf is quite narrow, 18 inches. So the rationale for the width of this shelf has to do with what's going on above the shelf in the buffer. There's actually a pretty substantial, well, it ranges from very wide to a little more narrow in here, but existing native plantings recently, as part of a previous application, I believe, several new iris were installed. And there's also a bit of an existing shelf within this area that has native plants. So given this substantial buffer, that's how we came to the dimension of 18 inches wide for the shelf that will be in the water. It will be submerged. The intention is for it to be at least 6 to 8 inches underwater at any time, and obviously that's 6 to 8 inches from the lowest level of the pond from then on up. So at times it could be almost completely submerged. We're calling for 90 iris and 90 of the native arrowhead, 1 gallon size, to plant that shelf. Are there any questions? Yes. Blue flag, the native. Further questions?
Are there further questions on this? No? Public questions or comments? Okay. Someone like to make a motion?
I'll move to approve. I think you've answered the questions raised by the director.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, next is 2017-128, 131 Old Mill Road. SC Minor and Company, Inc. for 131 Old Mill Road, LLC, for construction of a private horse facility with paddock, septic, and drainage 14 feet from wetlands. Pat, please.
I didn't say it got much.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you recall, we saw this property at our last meeting for a driveway realignment. Oh, thank you, Larry, with the pointer. And there was a foreshadowing of things to come, and this is it. This is really the motivator for the driveway realignment that the agency approved last month. This is, as was stated, meant to be a horse facility, or just going to be developed as a horse facility. As a horse facility, there are many aspects of it that do fall within Section 4.3 of our regulations, which is, or Section 4 as a whole is the as of right, and then there's the particular sections associated with it. So the structures in the regulated areas that are on site include 4 paddocks on the northern portion of the site adjacent to the proposed covered riding area, as well as a leaching unit and infiltration system. Those would fall underneath the 2 of those paddocks. Rain garden on the southern portion of the property was previously approved with the last driveway, last month. And let's see, the paddocks that are proposed unregulated areas in the northern portion of the site are 30 to 70 feet from a wetland watercourse system. The last paddock to the north is a sand paddock, and it is 40 feet from the wetlands and watercourse. The infiltration unit and leaching field are proposed underneath the paddocks. So the area here is predominantly in a lovely meadow condition. There is a hedgerow associated with the stone wall that runs perpendicular, thank you, to the watercourse. And trees associated with that will be lost in the paddock development, as well as some intrusion into the fringe area. The applicant is seeking a declaratory ruling on the proposed development without, and this is going to be revised, without discussion to substantiate the request. Since the writing of this, Mr. Lehman has brought or submitted more extensive write-up of specifically each activity, well above and beyond our regulated area. And I concur with Mr. Lehman that the 3 grass paddock areas are easily qualify as a declaratory ruling. And then the 4th lot, which is sand lot, I did not think was part of what would be accepted under Section 4, but Larry's further explanation of when you go back to the statute and you look at the definition of farming, it includes training, which the sand lot qualifies as a use for training. So while it's not cleanly part of Section 4, when you incorporate the back history of the other statutes, it is. And most importantly, that sand lot does not require clearing to develop it. And if it had, that would have taken it out of contention for Section 4. So that principally leaves the infiltration and the septic units as the regulated activities. During inspection, it was noted that a wood chip debris pile was approximately 75 feet in length and 20 feet wide was located. Since the writing of the staff report, I had been told that the wood chips are coming out.
Yes.
Which is great, because some of those trees were in jeopardy of being smothered. The application provides a solid manure management plan, so that is a big help. Most importantly, they're going to poop or scoop the paddocks. Who doesn't love that? And that will continue to help take the source of pollutants away from the watercourse. The property has been identified as being part of the Natural Resource Diversity Database and having habitat for several bat species, and the applicant, although not a wetland issue, is incorporating bat boxes on the property, which is terrific. So at the writing of this report, a delay was recommended. At this point, I am comfortable recommending an approval. And you don't have conditions, but I would suggest that the agency, since we see the same conditions month in and month out, that a motion for approval could include the statement with the special conditions, the appropriate special conditions as deemed by staff, and then the normal general conditions. There's no special conditions, if you will, that...
Special.
No special specials, just regular specials.
Thank you. Welcome, Larry.
Pat. Good evening. I'll be brief. This is one thing that needs to be said. This is a private facility. This is not open to the public. They're not going to hold lessons. They're not going to bring other people in. This is for one family. The name of the project, the name of the farm is going to be Starlight Farms, and that is all. They already own all of the horses. They commute them back and forth from here to Florida for the wintertime and so on and so forth. They actually have 3 or 4 horses that they'd like to retire and have stay there all the time. We are, as far as the health department, which you are giving us, which we are asking for approval, it has been reviewed and approved by the town health department, and has been reviewed and approved by the state health department, so that this way then, because of the facilities, and we had to ensure that we took into consideration the washing of blankets, all of the things that go along with the horse facility, and that has been approved by the town and the state. And I'm here to answer any questions that you might have, but it is a private facility. The one septic system and one Coltech system, it could be argued, and I'm not going to argue it. It could be argued that it is part of the facility and everything, but it's okay. I'm not arguing anything at all whatsoever. Exactly. Well, I
So
was
does
told
the-
to say that. That wasn't my own thing. Thank you.
So when the facility is, in the wintertime, when the horses go south, except for the nursing home patients, is it are there other horses bordered there?
No, this is just for a private facility only.
Very good, okay.
And we were in front of Planning and Zoning Commission next month to do the same thing, and it is not a commercial operation at all whatsoever. There is, in the barn, there are 2 apartments for the grooms people, because there may be a broodmare every now and again. They may do that, but that's...
Not regulated.
None of my business.
By us.
That's the way that goes.
Great, thank you. Any agency questions for Mr. Liebman? No? Public questions, comments? I will make a motion to approve.
And that's what
With the conditions, I'm sorry, with the appropriate special conditions as defined by staff. Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, thanks, see you. Okay, we have applications to be received. I will make a motion to receive applications 2017-029, 130, 131, 132, 133, 134, 135, and 136. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, next are agent approval permits. There are 2 2017-118 and 2017-121. Are there any public or private comments regarding agent approvals this month? No. Okay, very good. So moving on to violations. First is cease and correct order 2017-17 for Denise Gregory and Distinctive Landscaping, 89 Laughlin Avenue, unauthorized installation of a retaining wall and modifications of the driveway within a wetland buffer.
Okay, I'm going to read in the record of documents for 89 Laughlin Avenue. 6 photos taken August 31st, 2017. Violation notice issued on August 31st, 2017. Stop work order issued September 5th, 2017. Violation summary September 18th, 2017, and cease and correct order issued on September 18th, 2017. So staff went out to the site due to a possible violation and found that a retaining wall was installed between the house and the detached garage. There was gravel that was placed between the house and the wall. The other regulated activities on site included a modification to the driveway, which made it wider and shorter. Staff estimated that the retaining wall was about 5 to 10 feet from the wetlands that are on site. Staff spoke with the owner and the contractor, and it was determined that the purpose of the retaining wall was to create a level recreation area that will be astroturfed, which will be installed over the gravel. There was no activity that occurred directly in the wetland. Notice of violation was issued by regular and certified mail on September 5th. The cease and correct order was issued also by regular and certified mail on September 18th, with the deadline for the submission of an application for October 20th. Staff's recommending that the agency maintain the cease and correct order and that a certificate of violation be filed on the land record if the application is not received by the deadline of October 20th, 2017.
Okay, thank you, Dory. Hi, welcome.
Hi, good evening. My name is Wendell Richards, and I'm a landscape contractor. I've worked in Greenwich for about 32 years. I was brought, unfortunately, the Gregories, they're on business meetings, so they couldn't make it, so I told them somehow
Okay.
it's important that I show up to this
Okay.
meeting. I was brought on that property and to enhance the beauty of the property. And the first thing that I saw when I got there is that there were total miscellaneous debris in the back of the property. So even though my intention was to work on the front of the property, enhance the front of the property, the first thing I told them that it was necessary to clean up all the miscellaneous debris out of the, and they told me it was a wetland area. So I said, well, it's all plastic, it's all garbage, so it's necessary to clean it up. And we went ahead and we took out all the debris. Now, around the garage, it's about from the back of the garage to the wetlands, it's about the access area that they could go around the garage is about 8 feet. Now, that area was totally dilapidated. It was a lot of boulders, but they couldn't go around the garage. That property also has no outdoor area for recreation. So I suggest that, and they were concerned about their 3-year-old son, that they would like to put a play set. So I said, the only thing that I would suggest would be to add gravel to the area, and we would need to retain the gravel. So I proceed doing that, believing that because they had a fence, you know.
All right, I'm going to stop you right there, because we don't have an application to see, you know, you're painting a good mental picture for us.
Right.
But we don't have
Right,
sort of a
and
plan to look at.
he tried to submit the application with Lauren. He tried about 3 times, and he was unsuccessful before he left. So
Okay.
that's where we stand. We actually
Okay.
secure as soil scientists, et cetera,
Okay.
and we have, you know, we're working on, you know, getting
Okay.
everything sorted.
Very good. That's all we need to know. Because then when we have the application in front of us, we can have this conversation, but I know it's getting late and you want to go home.
Sounds good, yes.
All right.
Thanks.
So, thank you so
All right,
much.
take care. And quick question, when is the next meeting?
It'll be the last Monday of the month, usually, right?
Fourth Monday of the month.
Fourth Monday of the month.
So we will still have time to get it?
Oh, yes, yes,
All right,
you do.
thank you.
You do. Thank you. Motion to maintain cease and correct order, and
Second.
all in favor? All right, okay. And lastly, cease and correct order 2017-11 for Adam Stubsky, 99 Sterling Road, unauthorized removal of trees and other vegetation within a wetland and buffer area. Doreen, please.
Okay, very quickly, the record of documents is a stop work order issued on May 5th, 2017. Photos dated May 5th, 2017. Field investigation, the same date. 2013 GIS map. Stop work order letter issued May 12th, 2017. Field investigation dated May 12th, 2017. Field photos, the same date. Emails between Doreen Carol Andrews and Adam Sabaski, dated May 12th, July 25th, July 26th, and September 19th, 2017. Cease and correct order issued May 15th. Violation summary issued May 15th. Cease and correct follow-up letter was issued May 15th, 2017. And finally, an email between Doreen Carol Andrews and Bill Kenny dated May 23rd, July 25th, and September 20th, 2017. Okay, so this violation was first brought before the agency members during the May agency meeting for unauthorized clearing of trees and vegetation adjacent to an off-site wetland. The agency upheld the cease and correct order and required that an application be submitted by June 23rd. The owner has been in continued contact with staff and had anticipated the submission of the application on several occasions. However, the application has not been submitted to date. The owner's agent, William Kenny Associates, contacted staff on Friday, September 22nd, stating that the full application would be received no later than September 29th, 2017. Staff recommends that the agency maintain the existing cease and correct order and recommends that the agency refer this matter to the Law Department if the application is not received by September 29th, 2017.
Thank you. Are you, no, oh my,
In for penny, in for pound on 777.
okay, got it. Okay, well, I will make the motion to maintain the cease and correct order and to, per staff's recommendation, and to refer the application to the Law Department should we not receive an application by September 29th, 2017.
Yes.
Bill seconds, all in
Second.
favor?
Right.
Okay.
So what motivated you to stay through the rest?
See what goes on? Yeah. Educate myself.
Actually, I have a question, much as I hate to raise it. And the question has to do with what is the distinction between freshwater wetlands and tidal wetlands? And especially, this was coming in my mind for 777, whether the wetlands, since the tides do come up to that property, whether that qualifies as a tidal wetland and out of our purview, or a freshwater wetland.
I would say it's not a tidal wetland because the Tidal Wetland Act defines what a tidal wetland is, and it doesn't have any of the vegetation.
Right, it's vegetation
It's
based.
vegetation. Tidal wetland is defined by vegetation.
Well,
Partially.
Partially, yes.
Yep.
Soils, vegetation,
Fauna.
hydrology, but the fact that it's brackish water,
It's not a tidal.
well, it's not a tidal wetland.
Okay.
It's a tidally influenced river.
That's a better way to say it, okay?
The elevation above,
Elevation is way above the tidal wetland line, jurisdictional line.
Okay. Who's up for a beer?
I don't drink.
But you're going to come along anyway.
I will go for a quick one.
Alan, you going to join us?
Sure, new guy buys anyway.
We go to the Sundown Saloon on Greenwich Avenue. Jay?
sure, why not?